Gus is going to call us this week.
There we go. The broadcast is live. Dun, dun, dun. Here we are. We're waiting for Daisy.
We were discussing geography.
Geography.
Geography for 200, Alex.
It's been 30 seconds and Gus hasn't assigned us names yet.
I tell you.
I've been vacation. Because it's time to go to vacation. Tomorrow is the July 31st, and then it's August 1st, and it's time. Oh, not on vacation.
Daisy and the Bee Gees. We should be dancing. We're waiting for Daisy, too, because she's got vertigo right now. So she's waiting till she's not dizzy anymore to come on.
Which one of the Gibb brothers are we?
Who are they? There's Barry.
Maurice.
Where's the third one?
Can't remember.
Oh, I can't either. I don't remember why I always remember Barry.
Because he's the vocalist.
He was the best.
Oh, okay, that might be it.
I can't even remember the last time I listened to the Bee Gees.
Well, the Bee Gees ruined disco music. They turned it into crap. Disco music was jazz. It was jazz music played with an orchestra. Robin Gibb, yeah.
Robin Gibb.
Disco was R&B with marketing.
And R&B was great.
Oh, Daisy with some dancing. Yeah, we'll dance when Daisy shows up. Andy was the solo guy, right?
Yeah, the one who wasn't a member. Yeah,
wasn't the Bee Gees, but he was big on his own. He had some hits.
Well, I always preferred Chic.
Yeah, I never listened to much disco. Though I did listen to. Have you ever heard Joe and Darlene Edwards?
Nope.
Look up Joe and Darlene Edwards and their version of "Staying Alive" one day. They were actually. Do you know who the singer Joe Stafford is? She was like the #1 female vocalist in the U.S. in the 1950s. She sang with big bands in the 40s. She was with Tommy Dorsey's orchestra, Jimmy Dorsey's orchestra. She was one of those type singers.
Isn't it funny how you know all these male musicians from that era, but you don't hear much about the female musicians?
Yeah, and she's one of my favorites. And incidentally, the Jack Abel, the artist and inker for comics for years and years, his favorite vocalist too. He was of that era. But I discovered her listening to NPR. There was a show that played her, and I always liked her. But then they were playing their I can't remember her husband's name. He was a piano player. And Joe Stafford has just the perfect voice you've ever heard. They started doing, like in the 50s, at parties they would go to, he'd play the piano off key and she'd sing off key. That was like their party gag. And it was really hard for her to learn how to do that. Sometime in the 60s, they started putting out albums as Joe and Darlene Edwards. And like I had like Joe and Darlene Edwards' greatest hits.
Jonathan and Darlene.
Jonathan and Darlene Edwards. Got that wrong. And you see his hands playing the piano, and he's got like 2 left hands or something. And they're just they were doing this all the way up until Staying Alive was around. So I guess the late 70s, and that's when they do a version of Take the A Train that'll melt your ears. It's so out of tune and crazy. But yeah, Jonathan and Darlene Edwards. Like I said, I can't remember his name, but that's Joe Stafford. And I think they put the albums out and without their real names on them, and people didn't know who they were because
Paul Weston. I'm looking it up I'm looking it up on Discogs.com.
Some crazy records.
Yeah, Discogs is a really good website.
Yeah, just listen to a bit of their version of Staying Alive, and it's even worse than the original.
Oh, it is crazy bad. Well, it's bad on purpose, but it's nuts.
I'd rather listen to William Shatner sing Rocket Man.
Oh, that's harsh, man.
At least he was trying to be entertaining. They were trying to be entertainingly bad, and it's ooh.
I mean, I like both Shatner and Nimoy as actors, but as singers, not so much.
Hey, do you remember Eddie Murphy trying to be a singer?
Yeah. He had a hit with "My Girl Wants to Party All the Time."
Yeah,
I never liked it, but people
And then
did.
he had a funny song called "Boogie in Your Butt."
Written and produced by Rick James.
Nah.
I'm Rick James, bitch.
It
was actually Rick James who said it.
We used to have a guy at work that would say that every day ad nauseum, and everybody got sick of it. And the day that Rick James died, we were all waiting for him to come in. And the first words out of his mouth is, "I'm Rick James, bitch." And we all said, "He's dead now, bitch."
So I invented a game for our Cavern of Chaos.
Mm-hmm.
It's the comic book version of F, Marry, Kill. The name of it is
comic book version of that is.
What was that?
I don't even know what the non-comic book version of that is.
F, Marry, Kill, the regular version, or sometimes the rated G version is Kiss, Marry, Kill, where you name like 3 celebrities or 3 people you know, and one you have to kiss, one you have to marry, and one you have to kill. So if you've named, you name 3 beautiful actresses, and those are your choices. With this, it's read, rip, and slab. So you got 3 comics. One you get to keep and read. It's part of your permanent collection.
Yeah.
One you slab and put it in your collection. I guess that'll be the one that you think is going to be most valuable in a certain amount of years. And one you got to rip up. And I was thinking about like how to do this. Because it's like you kind of have to get comics that are similar in value, similar in theme. Because if you offer someone, 3, one is Action Comics #1, one is Watchmen #1, and one is the latest issue of Superman. You're gonna slab Action Comics #1, of course. Why wouldn't you? Read Watchmen and rip up the latest issue of Superman, because who cares about the latest issue of Superman? Right. So I was coming up with themes for it. So what I did was I looked at years I just put in like best Marvel Comics 1977 or something like this. And I actually got a list of the most slabbed comics of like, not even them. I had to pick from them like ones that were kind of equal value and of equal merit. So the first one would be 1977 Marvel. Red Sonja #1. Human Fly #1, and Tarzan #1. So one you slab, one you keep to read, and one you destroy.
That's easy for me.
Yeah, what would it be?
Okay, the read would be Red Sonja #1, the slab would be Tarzan #1, and the rip would be whatever the other one is. I don't remember.
Human Fly? You're going to rip up the Human Fly #1? Bill Lubbers does not like it.
Compared to the other 2, yes.
Well, none of them are particularly valuable, I don't think.
But I would slab Human Fly #1 just because it's the first appearance. And I would read Red Sonja and rip Tarzan because it's the worst Tarzan in comics, and it's the least interesting work by John Buscema.
Yeah, I haven't looked at Tarzan #1 in so long, I don't know.
Well, to me, even subpar Tarzan is better than 90% of most superhero stuff.
I wonder how many Human Fly #1s have been slabbed. There can't be a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Who drew that one?
I think Lee Elias maybe drew the first, or Frank Robbins. I can't even remember.
If it's Frank Robbins, that's the one.
Frank Robbins?
Was it Frank Robbins?
I guess. Let me check.
I think so. We need ETA Nick to look up on his what is that called? The where they have all the graded books in a database that you subscribe to. God, I can't remember the name of it.
About the Grand Comic Book Database?
No. There's something. If you're a comic book dealer or collector or whatever, there's the GPA, right? GPA average. There's like a website you can subscribe to for like $8 a month. I don't even know if it might even be CGC. I don't know, but they keep track of all the sales and all the how many. I think even CGC keeps track of how much stuff they've slabbed, but I don't think they give that info out for free. You have to pay for it. So because I know Nick always mentions it because he has a subscription to it because he wheels and deals in comics a bit, so he finds it useful. But I think I would slab Red Sonja #1, read Human Fly #1, and rip Tarzan. And that's only because I have a soft spot for the Human Fly.
Tarzan haters.
But Red Sonja #1 is not the first appearance of Red Sonja. It's not even the first Red Sonja solo story.
Ah.
Oh my God! We turned into a collector's TV channel.
That's what makes it a fun game. Takes us out of our comfort zone. Well, gets all sorts of places. Let's see. Let's go with here's an interesting one. This is the first one I thought of. I don't know why. Tarzan just got rarer after so much ripping Scott wins.
You can flip it now.
Our next one in Read, Rip, and Slab. Star Slayer #1. Star Slayer #2, First Rocketeer. Star Slayer #10, Grimjack. First
Damn.
Grimjack. One you have to read. One is yours for reading. One is you have to slab, and one you have to rip up.
I have to think about this.
That's interesting.
That's easy for me.
All in one 1980s comic. What was that, Scott?
That's easy for me too. You slab #2, you read #1, and you rip up #10.
Grimjack? No, Comic Crack. Comic Crack. We're playing this game I just invented, a variation of Kiss, Marry, Kill, called Read, Rip, and Slab. They give you 3 comics. One you keep for reading, one you have to slab, and one you have to tear up.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of people are going to read #1 because nobody actually cares about Star Slayers.
But I think it's a better read than the other ones. Maybe.
That's not true. Blue fans care about Star Slayer because that was his first appearance, was an ad in Star Slayer.
See, I care the most about Grimjack.
Okay.
I care the least about Rocketeer.
Oh, not me. I care the most about Rocketeer.
Yeah, I'd slab 10 and read 2 because, I want to read that. I want to read Rocketeer like that. Try to figure out what the first time people read Rocketeer, even though to me, I already read it in a graphic novel format.
So did I.
You know what? I think I might end up ripping #1.
Mm-hmm.
Now I want to read that Rocketeer. Paolo's talked me into it.
Rocketeer.
Slam #10 and read #2. Paolo talked me into it there. I'm like, I don't think I've read that in a long, long time.
Mm-hmm.
But it was actually, you have to think about even coming up with these because you got to, they have to be kind of similar in.
Right.
It's like I did a couple other years. I did Marvel 1991, Hulk 337. That's that Hulk with that cover that everybody collects with the bright green foil background.
Oh yeah.
Dale Keown and
it's the first merged Hulk.
Yeah, Hulk 377, Infinity Gauntlet #1. Or New Mutants 100. I know what Scott's ripping up.
Well, yeah, you do. That's true. I'll be honest. I'm not interested in any of those 3 books.
I know. That's what makes it interesting. You've got to read.
I think I actually have a copy of the Hulk book in a box somewhere. So maybe that one would be my read, but I read it.
That's what makes it a game. They're all equally disinterested in.
Right.
You still have to make your choice.
I disagree because I liked that Hulk story very, very much when I read it, and it still reads very well. And taking into account that Del Keown is known as a guy who likes to draw action and war and stuff exploding, all the dream scenario in that story makes for a very good read.
I don't
Del
know
Keown
if
did a wonderful job there.
I only read an occasional issue of the Hulk in that era. It wasn't I wasn't fond of it, so I don't know.
Keown's art. I don't hate it, but it doesn't do anything for me either.
I like Dale Keown's. It was just Peter David was writing it.
Yep.
I just didn't like the whole multiple personality. You know what it is? I don't like reading about mental illness in my superhero comics. To me, it's just like the illness of any kind, really. But it's meant to me. I don't like medical dramas. I don't. It's like I don't like Moon Knight once they made him actually multiple personality or whatever they call it now. It's kind of like I liked him when he was just a guy with 3 identities and no one knew which the real one was. Then they made him crazy, and I'm like, you know. For whatever it is, whatever my taste is, I don't like illness or mental illness in my superhero comics. Mm-hmm. If you want to do a sort of slice of life, true life comic about you having an illness, I'm okay with that. But if you make the Hulk some sort of weird multiple personality, I'm like, I don't know. It just takes me out of it. So that's why I didn't read a lot of that. Though I thought it was well crafted. It was well done. It would
depend on the writer. Some writers could pull that off and some can't.
Yes. And anything I don't like, the caveat is with a good creative team, they can make me like it.
I'd be willing to give Peter David the benefit of the doubt.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, one of the only reasons I read some of those issues of the Hulk were because the writing was good and so was the art. But I don't know. Let's see what would I.
So I'd rip Infinity Gauntlet and Slab X-Force number 100.
You know what? I think I'm on board with you. I just looked at that and went, I do not want to.
If I wanted to make money, I would go that way too. Yeah.
What was that?
If I wanted to make money, I would go that way too.
Well, that's part of it. You know, you wouldn't slab the one that you didn't like in some way, even if it's worth something, you might as well slap. Yeah, but
because Infinity Gauntlet opened the door to that incredible waste of space that was the Infinity Trilogy, and I really, really, really hate Infinity War, and I despise that trees were killed to create Infinity Crusade. So you stop it at the source.
This is why we create your own comics.
I actually read Infinity Gauntlet number 1 sometime within the last 2 years when they came out with the True Believers version of it. And it was okay, but I don't have any reason to ever read it again kind of thing. It's just like...
I actually have a copy of that. It was part of a stack I got from a dealer, like, take this stack for $20. I'm like, okay.
To me, Thanos died at the end of the Warlock saga. Stop it at the source. Nice.
Nip it in the bud.
Stop it at the source. Because
the thing is, Starlin came back to Marvel in 1990 to work on the Silver Surfer, and the first thing he did was, let me bring back my greatest hits.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, people love that. I remember talking to back in the early Corey Settlemeyer, who I think he still works at Marvel freelance. He was Folk Hero Corey. He was in charge of, I think he might still be in charge of it. I'm not even sure. The Marvel Masterworks line and a lot of their collected editions. And like on the marvelmasterworks.org, they called him Folk Hero Corey. Because he actually cared about the Masterworks, and he cared that it was because before Corey, at Marvel, if you were the Masterworks editor or the trade paperback editor in general, you were overworked, and there was no glory in trade paperbacks because you weren't creating anything new. So people got promoted out of that job as soon as they could. Corey actually cared. So he was the one who did stuff like in the Amazing. In the Spider-Man, the first Masterworks, he put the errors back in. Like Spider-Man eyeballs, he put those back in. Doc Ock actually accidentally calling Spider-Man Superman, he put that back in because he wanted them to be historically accurate. Adam Warlock should be a movie or new platform at Disney Plus. Totally overlooked, but yeah, people keep talking about Warlock being in the MCU, but
nobody actually does a good job with Adam Warlock. Nobody.
Yeah, but Corey was he's at least 10 years younger than me, I think. So he grew up on the Infinity Gauntlet, not on the original. And he was like, he thought that original that original Thanos stuff in the 70s was corny. I'm like, oh, come on. It's 1,000 times better than Infinity Gauntlet. But it all matters at what age you first discovered them, too. Because I love that.
They reprinted the entire Thanos storylines, both from Captain Marvel and Warlock, at around the same time that they brought him back in Silver Surfer. The Brazilians did, and so I'd read about Thanos, but I hadn't actually read any of the stories when they first came out. I knew about Warlock, and I'd read some Captain Marvel, but it was already the late in his original book. So I read those, and those were the originals were good. And the more Thanos kept appearing in Silver Surfer, the more he's doing the same thing. Thanos Quest was actually interesting because it pits Thanos against all the Elders of the Universe and other cosmic entities, and it's kind of disconnected from what's going on. It's like it could have happened anywhere in the timeline, even though you knew that it was being a setup for something else, but it could have happened anywhere in the timeline. And then it's Thanos appearing in the Infinity Trilogy, and then Thanos keeps appearing everywhere. Then there's Cosmic Powers line, and it's Thanos Overload. But when you read the original stories with Captain Marvel and Adam Warlock, those are still good.
Yeah, I was lucky enough. When I was like, those are actually the Warlock and Captain Marvel were a few years before my time. But I had a friend who was a couple years older than me, who was like, "Here, you have to read these ones," and handed me those ones. So I got to read them, when I was young, 10 or 12. That was probably in like the 77, 78. I read them, and then they didn't reprint them. Because in those days there were no trade paperbacks, and all the reprints were stuff from the 60s.
But they did those Baxter paper special editions in
the early 80s. I still have those on my shelf. They reprinted the whole Thanos thing, the Captain Marvel stuff, all the way through the Marvel 2-in-1 annual. That was the first time I had my own copies of it that I could read.
The closest, this is not an exact analogy at all, but the closest thing I had to trades back then were the Treasury editions.
Treasury editions and those little pocket ones.
Those little digest editions.
The digest size one, yeah. The DC had the digest. Marvel had the pocket books. Because that's where I first read the original. But that was all stuff from the 60s, too. There was because the pocket books I had Spider-Man, 3 volumes. It was like Spider-Man 1 through 20 or something they reprinted.
I had some of the Blue Ribbon Digest war books that DC did, and they were...
You're right. Those had some stuff from the 70s in it. Yeah. And I used to buy those in the early 80s. They were coming out, and they had stuff from the 70s in it. Yeah, that's where I first read Warlord.
It's funny you bring that up because back then I liked those books, but if one came out now, I would hate it because it's so small.
Oh, it's amazing how reading that when I was 12, 10 to 15, there was no difference between how small it was in a regular comic book. It was the same. My young eyes were perfect and had no problem. Now, I think it was when I first got on YouTube. One of the first taking a look videos I did was I pulled down all my DC digests and did a little video showing them off. And I'm telling you, I couldn't read them today. Even with my reading glasses, they were just so... I'm like, why would I ever read these? King's Poet in the house.
You mentioned Marvel 1977 earlier. It's a shame you didn't bring up Micronauts #1 and Shogun Warriors #1.
Well, you can make your own.
That's true.
Think about it this week for next week.
I wouldn't know. Well, the other one had to be Star Wars #1 because they came out in '77.
Yeah, that also came out. I was looking at some of the more value. It was, I think, Star Wars #1. I think Iron Fist 14 also came out in '77 on the list. But I was like, I don't want to do the expensive ones. I wanted to do the cheaper ones.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I've never said the price difference in those books is not the same at all.
Trump looks a bit like Warlock.
There was something in the pre-Starlin issues of Warlock that annoyed me when I first read it, because the High Evolutionary sends Adam Warlock to Counter Earth. He's going to become the Jesus Christ of that planet.
Yes,
and so of course there's got to be an Antichrist, and
yeah,
this politician shows up, and his name is Rex Carpenter, and I was, oh really? You're gonna be that obvious?
In the early 70s, it wasn't that obvious, okay? Not
really?
when you were 10 reading that. But yeah, the
I
Jesus
think I was
thing.
14 or 15.
Yeah, I only read a little of that. That's some nice Gil Kane artwork.
Mm-hmm.
But I remember, I think it was that same era, was that where they showed up in an issue or two of the Hulk around issue 190 with the Glorian. I think he was in that scene. And it was like Jesus and his band of apostles meet the Hulk. Yeah. I was just like, wow, this is weird. Then they had Glorian, who was like another Age of Aquarius Jesus character, like right around there. I don't think did they ever bring him back? Someone must have brought him back at some time.
Glorian appeared. I have about 2 or 3 news stories where Glorian appeared, and each time he was more ridiculous. I was actually more interested in the guy that hangs around him all the time, the Shaper of Worlds, because he's the Skrull Cosmic Cube.
Wasn't he in a box?
Yeah,
he like sat and he like had a box for a bottom.
Yeah,
floated around. Yeah, I remember him. The Shaper of Worlds.
Yeah, if I lived in a box, I'd have to float around, but that would be cool. I just annoyed people everywhere, just floating around them.
And then the last one I have is more comics that. Oh, you can just throw that over there. Got a package. The last one I got is more comics that Scott Connor won't care about. Here's your rip, read, and slab for this. Because it's from Marvel 2001.
Oh, damn.
Probably right.
Wolverine Origin #1. Alias #1. And the Ultimate X-Men #1. Which do you slab, which do you keep to read, and which do you rip up?
Mine's obvious.
Alias, so.
Okay.
I think I'm ripping Ultimate X-Men.
Yeah. I'm ripping Ultimate.
Yeah. I would slab Wolverine, read Alias, because I don't know anything about it at all.
It's Bendis.
Okay.
I'm going to have to slab Alias because I don't want to read it.
Well,
keep Wolverine Origin to read.
Yeah, but when it comes to value, Wolverine Origin is more valuable than Alias #1, even though it's Jessica Jones's first appearance. The other one is finally a new origin for Wolverine.
I'm willing to pay an extra $20 not to read Bendis.
Wow,
that's the thing. Alias is actually readable.
I didn't find it readable. Slab Alias, no. Read Origin. I think Comic Crack's on the same page as me.
Yeah, I'm gonna read
for
Alias.
the money. He's slamming Origins.
Yeah. Here's the thing. Yeah, I like to rag on Bendis as much as anybody else, but I do have to admit that when he's writing crime fiction is good, and Alias is more crime fiction than it is superhero.
I have never read anything by him that I've liked. So
the only Bendis I ever read was when he was doing Jinx and one of the titles. I read an issue of Ultimate X-Men that was one of the worst comics I ever read. I read Alias, which I just didn't like. I read Ultimate Spider-Man, which was as bland as possible.
And I read Powers, which made no impression on me at all.
Well, Powers is one of those comics with multiple talking heads. I think he actually did one page that had 20 or 30 talking heads.
And I hate the way he does it too, because he actually asks for each panel to be statted exactly the same.
Mm-hmm.
That's not the artist he works with. That's Bendis, who wants, when he has a panel of talking heads and they're all the exact same talking head, that's what he likes. I don't even get that.
I can only think of one artist that could pull that off and do that well, and that would be Paul Chadwick.
Mm.
Yeah, but usually when artists do talking heads, they change the expression from panel to panel.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
You match whatever they're saying with their expression with whatever they're saying. Bendis didn't want to do that for some reason.
But in Bendis, the characters don't have an expression. The characters have something that they say, and the expression is modeled after what they say. So they have no actual state of mind.
Yeah, I just assumed Alias was a big one out of those. Maybe flipping my read and
See, he could do that.
Terrence is going for the money too, not me. I'm going for the avoiding reading Brian Michael Bendis.
He could do a story about Rorschach and just fill in random ink blots on all the different faces and all the stats.
Yeah.
But you see, he wouldn't put in. He'd have the same ink blot in every panel.
Right.
That's what I'm saying. Everybody else
would have to tell the artist
random ink blots. He'd do the same ink blot.
Yeah. In any case, the guy who drew Powers was Michael A. von Oming. So it's not going to be much expression there.
Right. Yeah, that's the problem I've been having. I've been. Let me show this book again. I took the Great Gatsby graphic novel out of the library last week, and I've been reading it this week. And sometimes a lot of the storytelling is good. A lot of the staging is good. But most of the time, the expressions on their face are bland, while the dialogue is not. Okay. And it's just kind of like, this artist just didn't do facial expressions mostly. Mm-hmm. So it's kind of like, But I like a lot of the art, but the new one that Portuguese artist is drawing is much better.
Did he at least get the buttons on the right side of the shirt?
With Comic Cracks in, he'd have money to buy more Dirty Underground comics.
Yeah.
Terrence, do you know an artist called Milton Knight? Well, I would just have to wait for him to. I think.
Thought about Bendis while watching today's kayfabe on Watchmen. They show a few pages of Night Owl talking to Silk Spectre, which are good. It's I've as an indie guy, I've read comics that are nothing but talking heads, and they're Tom King talking heads. They work well. The problem I have, especially with mainstream superhero talking heads, there's guys who do that full time. Mm-hmm. Not just dabble with it, and like Seth. Clyde fans and It's a Good Life If You Don't Weaken are two of my favorites. These are talking heads and Seth walking around the neighborhood contemplating life.
Right. But in superheroes, you expect action and adventure.
Right. And it would be... Yeah. You ever see like those specials like Marvel or DC put, like Bizarro World, I think, was one. And Strange Tales was another, where they have indie guys do short stories. Mm-hmm. I always find them disappointing because they're nice to look at, but none of them are, except for that Peter Bagg one, which I've mentioned before.
Did you like the Solo series that DC did several years ago?
What is the name of it?
Solo, where they had different artists.
It was okay. That one was pretty to look at, but there was nothing to read.
Okay, Terrence, I just met Milton Knight. I was on a live stream with him a few minutes before we started here, because he was being interviewed on another YouTube channel, Grot Warloff, And I wanted to show him my copy of Graphic Classics H.G. Wells because it's got a story illustrated by him.
Ah. You wanted to prove he knew him.
I will read anything that has to do with War of the Worlds.
Kind
It's
of.
just one of those things I just like. I don't know why.
And I read Mr. Miracle, which I ultimately didn't like, but it was well done. And I think part of it was it Mitch Gerard was the artist. Mitch Gerard did a real good job with Tom King's writing, drawing it. So that's, I mean, a lot of times it is the drawing is part of the writing.
Yeah,
So,
I mean, Watchmen is a good example of that. If anybody had drawn that except Dave Gibbons, it just wouldn't be the same.
yeah, the drawing is the writing, and a part of it at least. You know, it's the drawing is the drawing, but it's also part of the writing. So it's tough to separate them in a comic. But sometimes you get if you get a bad artist, he can wreck your good script, and a good artist can save your mediocre script.
It's true.
So that's the way
Them
life
start
is.
drinking.
Yeah, Mitch Gerard is great at doing talk. He's great at staging, dialogue that's going on. Too much action and adventure, so it drove me away from comics. Yeah, like I said, I've been an indie guy mostly since the mid '80s. So I've got comics that are tons of, that's my aesthetic, which is why I'm not a big fan of it when, Marvel guys do it. They often don't do it well.
You know that if you draw in a Linklater style, you can mix talking heads and action adventure perfectly.
Yeah, that's really true.
Because if you read Blake and Mortimer comic, you're going to have blotches of copy bigger than anything Chris Claremont could ever think of, and you still have room for action.
The Rainbow Orchard series, which I can't remember the creator's name on that.
That guy did a great job.
Yeah. But when people, it's not even the talk. It's usually like in mainstream superhero comics. It's not the drawing part of the talking heads that usually bothers me. It's the writing part. It's the dialogue is usually not that interesting.
Yeah, it's the journalists in Spawn.
Yeah. Which is the one comic this week I haven't read yet because there were shipping delays at my store. Matter of fact, where is it? There were shipping delays at my store. So I couldn't get my comics till Thursday night rather than Wednesday night. So the one that went to the bottom of the pile that I haven't read yet is Spawn. Yeah. And I'm buying it because it's like the last $2.99 comic.
Let me see that cover again. It's beautiful.
He's got some. I'm buying it too because I'm buying it also because I like the art in it. It's better than who did this cover? This is cover 1. Does it tell us?
Todd is doing variant covers too, please.
Yeah, Bjorn Barends, or is this Francesco Mattina? Is there BB? So this is Bjorn Barends did this cover.
Must be Swedish.
Yeah. Nice. This hasn't been read yet since it went to the matter of fact. Until you mentioned it, I forgot I got it and hadn't read it this week. I completely. It's in the pile here. My stuff to show off. I thought I read all my comics this week. I did not.
It's $3 well spent.
Yeah. But I am serious. That is a very good cover, and I'd probably buy it if I came across it.
Yeah, like I said, it's the last $2.99 books. I've been buying them month to month, but I finally put it on my pull list. Just because I'm like, if it goes up to $4, I'm taking it right off. But until then, since it's $3, I'll keep it on my pull list. Because why not? It's the last of the $3 books. I feel I have to support it. It's an emotional attachment to cheap comics.
I just had an idea. There should be a South Park comic, and it should be priced at $3.50.
Went to Blake and Mortimer just because they're always well dressed and smoking finely.
Well, they are British, and the story set in the 1950s, so of course. And Blake is an RAF colonel.
And the one I picked up there. Speaking of Tarzan being ripped up, here is Gru meets Tarzan.
Yeah, I drove specifically to a shop to pick that up, and it was the same thing. I forgot there was a shipping delay, so I don't have to.
Yeah, usually like when there's when my shop emails me about a shipping delay, that doesn't mean just their store. That means like half the East Coast.
Yeah, I read something on Facebook or whatever that there was a big shipping delay everywhere. So.
But I have to say, let me show you what sold me this comic was the double page spread. I think the last Gru I got was Gru versus Conan. And that was like 10 years ago. That was a long time ago, I think. And I was mildly amused by it. So I didn't know if I wanted to pick up Gru versus Tar. This one's 4 issues. And I was like, I don't know if I want to pick it up. But they had a shelf copy. So I flipped through it, and this was the double-page spread by Sergio of a Comic-Con. And there's just so much chicken fat in there that I loved it.
Yeah, anytime that Sergio does a big spread of a Comic-Con anywhere, there's Easter eggs all over the place.
Oh, I was like, you know what? He just sold me this issue with that double-page spread.
Yeah, but I would be willing to bet you $10 there's a character of Scott Shaw somewhere in that image.
There's lots of people dressed as Batman, Day of the Dead, the big hat. Oh, it's just endless. I'm gonna have to sit down. There's even one of Mark Evaniers' DN agents, the woman dressed like Rainbow.
Huh.
It's just so fun. There's a Garfield. Oh, that's right, because Mark Evanier was he worked on the Garfield cartoon. A giant gorilla with a backpack.
Yeah, I'd be surprised if there's not a King Kong in there somewhere.
Mama, the cartoon comic strip Mama, she's over there on a poster. So that double page, the rest of the book was mildly amusing. It's Tom Yates drawing the Tarzan parts, and Sergio Argoni is drawing the Gru and Mark Evanier and Sergio Argoni. There's 3 separate stories going on. There's the Gru story, there's the Tarzan story, and there's the Mark Evanier, Sergio Argoni's story about how Sergio wants to make a Tarzan story.
Very similar to Conan, Gru versus Conan. That's kind of the way they set their stories up. They did the same thing with Sergio Stomp's Star Wars.
Right, and it looks like the...
and Sergio destroys the Marvel Universe and destroys the DC Universe. Yeah.
Same sort of thing, but like I said, that double page spread was worth the price of admission.
You won't find a bigger Sergio Argoni's fan than me. So.
Yeah, and then the running joke in it is everybody at the con kept saying how Spy versus Spy was their favorite strip that he did.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, Gru versus Tarzan.
Spy versus Spy by Sergio Aragonés. Was it made in Beach Rice, New England?
Right. I could actually
whip that up and
drawing Spy versus Spy because he's got that sense of humor.
He draws quickly. That's Sergio. Mad Marginals. Let's see. The other thing, I got a 6th printing of Department of Truth #1. This is, as I've shown in weeks before, I read Department of Truth, the first trade paperback on Hoopla, and decided to put it on my pull list with and my local comic shop had issues 6 through 9, so I was able to pick those up, and it's been on my pull list since issue 10. And I saw that like every week I get an email from my comic shop that final order cutoff. and I can just click on what I want if it's not on my pull list. And I saw they had a 6th printing of this. I was like, I'll take a 6th printing because I don't have a 1st through 5th printing.
Yeah. Is that JFK on the front?
That's JFK up there. Yeah. And
it's hard.
Up there and down there.
Oh, okay.
I guess he's dead and alive. He's got the X's through his eyes and not through his eyes. Is that how? But the funny thing with this, and it's got an all-seeing eye. Like the basic concept of this is the Department of Truth is if too many people believe a conspiracy theory, it becomes true in reality. So the Department of Truth keeps people from believing in crazy conspiracy theories. And the big reveal at the end of issue 1 is that Lee Harvey Oswald is the head of the Department of Truth. But I've been enjoying it. Good comic. But the funny thing about this cover, this was supposed to be the 1 in 25 alternate cover. By mistake, they printed it as the main cover and made the main cover 1 in 25. So now they have to go back and reprint because all the people who ordered and wanted the main cover, they now have to make that one the regular one. So they've go back with another printing with the main cover for the people who wanted the main cover. So it's like there'll be no 1 in 25 for this. There'll just be 2 covers somehow. I don't know how that works.
So there's no actual point in slabbing it.
So slab that one.
There's no point in slabbing the 1 in 25 because there won't be one. So lots of the other ones coming out. But now I just need the 6th printing of issues 2 through 5 if they ever exist. Slab it. You got it. Error variants, multiple printings. You're sitting on a jackpot then. No, this one isn't rare though. That's the problem.
But he spent all the money he gained on the $2.99 issue of Spawn.
Yeah. And also with that one came out this week. Department of Truth number 11, which the last 2 issues have been about Bigfoot, and it's been really sad because once again, in this, not only if enough people believe in it, does it become truth, but if you get near one of these sort of anomalies that have become, they just mess with your mind. It just messes with your mind. Because it's something that shouldn't exist that does, so people who get near it, they get their minds messed with. So this story was about a guy who, when he was a child, his father was a Bigfoot hunter. He liked to go out and find Bigfoot. And when he was a small child, he went out with his father, and they saw Bigfoot, one of these anomalies. And it messed with his father's mind, and it messed with his mind. And he ended up, I think his father ended up killing himself at some point. Because, like I said, just become obsessed with Bigfoot. And so this guy, his whole life, since he saw Bigfoot as a kid, it became his hobby. And he grew up and got married, and he had a wife who kind of, and the whole thing, this is an example of, if it's done well, I'll accept it. Because some pages are his diary. And I usually don't like reading big blocks of type.
Is that font readable? Because I can't tell.
It's actually, here's an interesting thing. It's very readable. Okay. It's actually not a font. It's actual cursive handwriting.
Okay.
But I say to myself, how many 21-year-olds can read cursive or something? I'm like, I don't know. Since cursive isn't taught, but I really liked that they've got all these effects and little drawings in the side too, which probably don't show up very well on camera. But all that was really done too, because I've seen them try to like he's got a little sketch of Bigfoot. Whoops.
Right.
And it's like all that stuff actually. Normally, this never works. Blocks of type designed to look like a notebook, with distressed paper and drawings in the margins. Usually any one of those things can go wrong, and I don't like it. But this was some Goldilocks stuff here, in that it was all just right for me for some reason. So I find it amazing that they pulled it off to the point that I liked it, because usually I don't. Usually big blocks of text means a lot of bad writing. Which was it? Oh, The Wicked and the Divine. Do you guys remember that book? Have you read it?
I remember the title, but no, I never.
Jamie McKelvey drew it. Kieran Gillen wrote it. I liked it. Lasted 40, 45 issues it was. But there was also a few specials. And one of the specials had blocks of type that were supposed to be, a journal or something. I couldn't make it through it. I like Kieran Gillen's writing. Those blocks of text were boring. So, heard a story about a Brazilian guy who went to a comic shop just to slightly damage stuff. So his pristine coffee was a bit rarer. Bring Brazil, not sure he's alive. I always say stuff like that when I like ding my comic or something. I'm like, oh, everybody else's copy is more valuable now. But this was a really poignant issue, because, like I said, all of that stuff was a guy writing to his estranged son, because he became so obsessed with Bigfoot that his wife divorced him. He kind of messed up his first son a little, and his second son was little when he left, got divorced, so he didn't really know his second son that much. So this is all about his regrets spending his life searching for Bigfoot. Meanwhile, at the same time, our Department of Truth guys are searching for Bigfoot to kill it, because it's an anomaly that shouldn't exist. And it's a very poignant story, I have to say.
Yeah, and usually in stories like that, the government is wanting to capture to weaponize it instead of just
not in this. In this, they have to. The anomalies or whatever are too dangerous.
It occurred to me that if you had a really good writer, they could use that anomaly messing with your mind thing to do a branch on that and go off into the Mandela effect.
Okay. Yeah, they're doing Ruby Ridge, I think, next issue, but they've been doing a lot of stuff, a lot of conspiracy stuff that's interesting.
And that reminds me too, people watch all these quote unquote reality shows on what used to be the History Channel, which is now the Ancient Aliens Channel. Things of that
history,
which 90% of it is just complete hogwash.
Yeah.
But of that 90%, they would make for some great comic stories.
I'm not saying it's aliens, but it's aliens.
Right.
But the Department of Truth has been I have to say, a nice pickup for me. This is why sometimes I'm like, I'll just, because I was at the comic shop with talking with a couple of people. I usually now that everybody's vaccinated at the comic shop, I can meet my friend Rob there again. So we hang out for a while and chat, and there's a couple regulars who we see too, who hang out and chat with us. And I was just talking to the one guy. I was like, "Oh, you want to try something good? Department of Truth." He's like, "I kind of missed it. Then I want to get there." I'm like, I'm not like that anymore. If I want to try a book, I'll just jump in on issue 6. I don't, I'll read the early issues on Hoopla. I'll get 6th printings of them sometime. I like, because once again, that's how we used to buy comics growing up. You didn't start with issue 1 on everything. There was no such thing. You just jumped on whatever number happened to be there. So I was like, you know what? I can still do that. Speaking of numbers, the unethical Spider-Vark, I got a good number on it.
What's the title?
That's the Cerebus in Hell stuff, the unethical Spider-Vark. Every issue is a parody. You know, this is of course the first Punisher parody. And he each issue is individually numbered with the print run. He's been doing that for the last year or so. So I find it fun to watch the print run go up and down by 500, 800, or 1,000, depending on what's parodied. Like last issue was Strangers in Paradise. I think that one had like 17 or 1,800 in the print run. This is Spider-Man, so the print run is 2,400 just over. So it's like it varies. So there are 1,000 people buying this or ordering this just for the cover.
Right.
No other reason. And I got 1,001. Woohoo! That's a number people like. I don't know why. Doesn't matter in the least. No, there will be no back issue market for Cerebus and Hell. I can assure you of that. With a print run of 2,400, everybody who wants one has got one. 10 years from now, no one will want them.
I wonder about 40 or 50 years from now if anybody will even know what Cerebus is.
Good question. Oh, I saw an interesting quote by Larry Hama on who was it? Ruben Diaz, who was an editor at Marvel for a couple of years in at Marvel. In the late 90s, I think he was there for a couple of years. He just on Facebook said something like, "Ooh, what's your comic book people? What's your shop job?" I forget the term. He said it's a wrestling term for the job you have outside of wrestling. I forget what it was. He's a big, but anyway, people were saying, "Oh, you know, all the people he worked with in comics are like, oh, you know, because he works at a hospital now." And Larry Hama had one of the most interesting ones, because I think he said first of all, Bill Jemas blackballed him at Marvel. So for about 8 years, he couldn't get any work anywhere. And so he went back, he'd be a teacher. He got all of this stuff. King Spo, it's an architect. He went back to be he went to all this stuff. He went to, I think he tried teaching some college. He went to be a teacher at a state school teacher, where he had to go back and get a degree in this and that. And they told him they didn't want any art teachers unless they could teach Photoshop. And then all of a sudden, after 8 years, he went from being a has-been to being a living legend, and people hired him again. I was like, he's like, somehow I went from has-been to living legend, and people started hiring. I found that an interesting concept. How he spent a lot, he couldn't get work because he was a has-been, and then I guess to the people who he was a living legend to grew up and were working in comics now. I found that an interesting turn of events.
Yeah, I can see that. So one of my friends on Facebook his name's Mac Reynolds. He did a book for Image. It was called The Mercenary Sea, and he has an art style which is very reminiscent of traditional cell animation.
Right.
But he's going to be doing a project with Larry Hama, but I don't know exactly what it is yet.
A project for who?
With Larry Hama writing it.
Oh, with Larry Hama. Okay. That's interesting.
It's probably going to be something military in nature, but I'm not sure. Why
did he get blackballed? I think just because when Ike Perlmutter was awarded Marvel. I don't even say bought. The judge gave Ike Perlmutter Marvel. And eventually Bill Jemas came on. They were two guys who were my way or the highway guys. They didn't brook any dissent. So if you dissented, you were gone. They wanted nothing but yes men. That was their style of leadership. You were a yes man or you were out of there. Matter of fact, Bill Jemis eventually was out of there because he wasn't a yes man for Ike at some point. He overstepped his bounds in getting rid of people. Matter of fact, it came down to one day. It's like I had go and read. There's a blog on it. I forgot to get the link to it. There's a blog that Bob Greenberger put his name in his writing called "My Year at Marvel." He was a longtime DC guy. He came over to Marvel for 1 year in the early 2000s under Jemis and Promoter. He worked directly with them, and it was nuts what the stories he tells. But like it's the weirdest, one of the final straws that broke the camel's back with Bill Jemis and at the time in the early 2000s, Marvel had a lettering department. Instead of having a lot of freelance letterers, they had 5 or 6 guys on staff doing lettering, and I think that was one of Bill Jemis's things. Which is also why Marvel's lettering went all uppercase, lowercase. That I'm fine with, but a lot of people don't like, because Bill Jemis wanted it all to go uppercase, lowercase. And he put the lettering department through hell. Bill Jemis did. Finally, one day, this one guy, Paul Toutrone, was like, he's a letterer. He's like, no, I'm quitting. I can't take it anymore. He was just like, I'm quitting. So he went in and quit. And that caused such an uproar. It was kind of like the straw that broke the camel's back, with Bill Jemis doing all this stuff on his own, and he somehow got on Ike's bad. He was Ike's guy for a long time. And then somehow his decisions made him not Ike's guy as much anymore. And that, Paul and Ike even called Paul into his office. Paul was like, I don't want to go into Ike's office. I just want to quit. I just want to quit. So Ike even called him in, like that. The day he was finally like, I can't take it anymore, I quit. Ike even called him into his office to interview him to find out, and he told him, like, I can't take it anymore. Too much of this, because they would change things constantly, do this internet. It was just micromanaging nightmare stuff. You'd have to ask him the story of what he went through, because I don't remember.
Yeah, that sounds familiar. I've been there.
But it was not long after that Bill Jemis got fired. But before that, if you went against Bill Jemis, or if you ever had a boss in a meeting who only wants to hear, yeah, boss, great. That's what they are. That's if you said, hold on a second, I don't think that's a very good idea. You weren't on his team, and that you were, that's 1 foot out the door. So that's why he in some way went against Bill Jemis and was blackballed. They just, once again, and it isn't even an official. There's no list. No one says you can't hire Larry Hama. It's just that the other editors get the message when if you hire Larry Hama, you're going to be the next one to be fired. There's no
unwritten rules of baseball.
Yeah, that's what you always hear. Someone's like with all this kerfuffle they had a few years ago with people saying they've been blackballed from Marvel. It was like, you don't have to be black. There's only 1 or 2 editors who will hire you anyway, and you pissed them off, so they're not going to hire you. And if you piss off one of their bosses, you're not going to hire someone your boss doesn't like. He doesn't need to make an official list. It's, the boss doesn't like this guy, he doesn't get the job. I mean, that's how the world works. But I don't know the specific incident that got him. Larry didn't mention it on his. Matter of fact, I think I saved. Because sometimes when I see something on Facebook that's a little bit of comic history, I take a screenshot and save it, which I think I did for this one. Let me see. Because I love little bits of comic history that I don't know. We'll get Larry's exact words so I don't misquote him. Do, 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 do. There's the boring part where my computer's trying to. There we go. Where is Comic Art of Others? Where did I save it? Is that it? Oh no, I didn't save that. That's Roy Thomas talking about the creation of the X-Men.
How big is that?
Oh crap! I don't have it. I'm gonna have to go back and get it later then.
From what I've read, Larry would be a really interesting guy to have a conversation with.
Who is?
From what I've read, Larry Hama sounds like he'd be a really interesting guy to have a conversation with.
I haven't talked with him too much over the years, but he's also, here's one thing to know about Larry at conventions. If he's drawing, you won't be able to talk to him. If he's not drawing, you'll be able to talk to him. He can't talk and draw at the same time.
I heard he knows how to detach your face from your skull.
He probably knows that too.
Doubt it.
He's one of these martial arts masters guy, and guns and everything he knows. I would not be surprised to hear that. Let's see, what else did I get? Usagi Yojimbo, Dragon Bellow Conspiracy #2, continuing with this. I think you said he was the Mouse Guard guy?
Yeah, David Peterson.
Covers. Mm-hmm. Yep.
Yeah, that's the other one I don't have the copy of yet either because of the delay.
David Peterson. Yeah. This is once again the reprints of the Usagi stuff. I wonder if we're into the 90s now. I don't even know. It's originally printed in black and white, now in glorious color. And it's Usagi. It's always good. Good sword fights.
And that's the nice thing about Usagi's. It works as well in color as it does in black and white. Both ways.
I loved it in black and white. I'm loving it in color. There's also they put out a second printing of Usagi's almost never get a second printing.
Yeah.
The only other second printing I know of is the Turtles one from many, many years ago.
But the hardcovers that sell out like that, annoy me.
They put out a second printing of, I think, two months ago. They introduced a new character, a new rabbit character who's his cousin, and just everybody, for some reason, that issue got hot. You never see an issue.
I wonder if you're speculating not only on that, but also because there's an upcoming. Show.
That's what I thought. But the character in the cartoon doesn't take place in Usagi's time, so it's going to be a completely different.
The more I read about the animated series, the more it's going to be set up like Batman Beyond. It's going to be set up like Batman Beyond. It's several years.
Oh yeah.
And it's one of Usagi's descendants.
Mm-hmm.
But there was a comic of it, wasn't it? Space Usagi?
Yes.
That's a whole different thing.
Space Usagi is exactly like Usagi Yojimbo, except instead of being set in medieval Japan, it's set in space.
Yeah, it's set in
Otherwise, it's the same.
It's a science fiction version.
Yeah. It's like the everything around them is different. They got blasters and spaceships, but otherwise, there's not really different. It's kind of fun.
The Usagi Yojimbo Senso series, which is also a science fiction, is basically his take on War of the Worlds.
Right. I forgot about that one. That one was good. Senso. Usagi Yojimbo versus aliens. But that took place in medieval Japan.
Yeah, much better than Cowboys versus Aliens.
I never saw it, nor read it.
I read it. I'd rather not.
Did you read it before the movie or after?
I never saw the movie.
I saw it.
I mean, before the movie came out.
Can't remember.
Did you stumble onto it blindly, or did you know about the movie and say, "Oh, look, a comic book from"?
I think I know it about the movie because it was Platinum Studios, and so yeah, they do it. They do it for the movie.
Wasn't there some story with that one while they somehow made that look like a hit comic?
I don't know.
There was something, I don't know. It was something like I have no idea if this is true or not. I just remember reading. I've heard someone refer to it like they put out the comic, or because I never saw the comic ever, and then they bought like, I don't know, 10 or 20,000 copies of their own comic to make it look like it was a hit to the movie people.
Oh,
it's
so
possible.
They could put
remember that
best-selling comic on it
because it only came out as a graphic novel.
Yeah.
So if you buy 20,000 of those yourself, you can tell that it's the best-selling graphic novel in America or something.
Yeah. Usagi invited to the Playboy Mansion. There's a crossover.
There's wrong type of bunnies there, Gus.
With his cottontail.
Well, let's not ruin your stuff.
And let's see, what else did I get? Oh, Grendel, The Devil's Odyssey, issue 8 of 8.
So it ends.
No. It really needs some Vaseline.
It was a kind of non-ending ending. Because he's going to be doing 3 more 4-issue miniseries.
Okay.
But what was weird about it, first of all, in issue 7, we had the weird Donald Trump satire that kind of came out of nowhere.
Yeah.
Because most of the story has been like Star Trek. He's been exploring strange new worlds. Because in the first issue, his people back on Earth, which I couldn't figure out if they were the only humans left or they were alien. I don't remember at this point, but for any reason, whoever was his people on Earth were getting wiped out by other people, who I thought were aliens, but I get maybe they were other humans. I don't know. So his people said, we have a mission for you. We're going to shoot you out into space in a rocket, find a world that we can live in so we can move our civilization off of this planet and not be killed, all of us. So that's what he was doing this whole series. So in this issue, he's like, he hasn't found a planet. He's like, all right, I'm going to find a planet. And all of a sudden he gets space napped by this advanced civilization. They just take his whole ship, bring it into hyperspace, bring it into their ship, transport him over to their ship to interrogate him, to see what is going on with him. Because these people don't like humans. Humans are wrecking stuff. They don't know if humans are advanced enough to be welcomed into the Galactic Empire or whatever. But they're so far ahead of us technologically that he like at one point he wants to escape and he detonates his last ditch effort nuke, and they're just like, oh cute, a nuke, and just that's how far. So he's like and he's got this little semi-sentient AI floating around him, but in this new world, AIs have the same rights as humans. And they're like, oh, we can free you of your protocols. You can make your own decisions. It's like, okay. So there you go. And Grendel's like, well, I'm going to go back to Earth. I have to go back to Earth then. So, okay. These advanced people put him back in his ship and send him back to Earth. He gets back to Earth and because he wants to check out what's happening on Earth. But here's the weird thing. They sent him off on this trip. Because of how far he traveled and relativity and this and that, it's 450 years later when he gets back to Earth. Don't you think that's a problem? If you wanted to move everybody off Earth so you could save your civilization, that maybe a trip of 450 years wouldn't be ideal.
But when he gets back, there's going to be a new Fast and Furious movie that's coming out.
So it ends with him on Earth. Where is it? Him on Earth, and he reads the population. In his, I don't think they didn't even let him keep his spaceship for the spaceship's in orbit until he can go get it until whatever. He can't even go back to a spaceship at this point. But he's like, I still see the major population centers. I'm still reading them, but with much less population. And at the end, we have him with this reward for anyone who knows Grendel and these people on stakes with Grendel outfits. So who knows what we're in for with the next miniseries. But it looks like they don't like Grendel on Earth anymore very much 450 years later.
So no matter where he goes, nobody likes him.
I sense a Western.
Yeah. What are but I mean, it was good. I enjoyed it, but it was a non-ending ending, which is fine because I'm going to buy the other ones. But it's like, why? I guess the only reason they're making a miniseries is because of sales. People don't buy continuing series.
Yep.
I think that's the only reason. Because 3 consecutive 4-issue series. Matt, Brennan, and Dave will be back with 12 issues, which will comprise the Grendel, the Devil's Crucible story arc. Matt's next major arc will consist of 3 series: Devil's Crucible Defiance, Devil's Crucible Sedition, and Devil's Crucible Necrotic. So those are our next 3 4-issue miniseries.
Who's publishing Grendel these days?
Dark Horse.
Okay, yeah, because Dark Horse really likes that 4-issue miniseries format.
Yeah. I think I've heard Sleepy Reader say that. Like, all Dark Horse miniseries they used to be 6, then they're 5, I think now, maybe even 4.
Depending on the creator, yeah.
But it was good. I liked the series a lot. I think it had some of Matt Wagner's best drawing and storytelling in it.
Mind the Comics has an important question about Grendel.
Do people still button? Right? If so, let me glance at to see if there are buttons on these scarecrows.
I'm thinking 450 years in the future, you're probably going to have clothes that automatically zip themselves.
Yeah, I don't see
There
any
are no
buttons
buttons
on these clothes. We'll have to see. Now I'm looking at. There's some really nice pinups in the back by someone named Dan Christensen. Some really, some black with some different versions of Grendel.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Black, white, and red. Some nice
Tajiro,
pinup.
and him fighting, what was the name? Arjan?
Oh, yeah. Argent. Yeah, that was the Christine Spar Grendel villain.
Yeah.
Dan Christensen is an American comics artist living in La Rochelle, France. He's the author of the cops and supervillain drama Paranormal, published in Europe by Carabis and coming out soon to American comic shelves from Black Eye Books. Ever hear of him?
No.
Carabis publisher?
No, but I've heard of that title he worked on.
Paranormal.
Yeah, Paranormal isn't an unusual title, so.
I can just imagine somebody goes to a comic shop and sees that Carabas and misreads it as cannabis and buys it just because of that.
Nice little cover there on The Shadows. I don't know what that is. But I like that cover. A tale of exile and migration, depicting the journey of people of all ages as they flee misery in order to seek a better world. Vincent Zabis, the scriptwriter, is also a playwright and theater actor while performing a play in Belgium. Okay, who's the artist? How do you say that Greek god's name? Hippolyte? No.
Just spell it.
Hippolyte. I think that
I'm not 100%
Hippolyte.
sure on that one. I'm not going to pull a Tim and pronounce it 10 different ways, so I'm not sure.
It might be yeah. I've heard it pronounced. I can't remember, but that's the name of the artist, Hippolyte. That sounds like the American version of it. There's probably a Greek pronunciation too.
They should have used that title to do a biography of the rock band from the 60s.
Just bring that up next time Tim is on, and however he pronounces it, it's the wrong one.
Yeah, he's a one-named artist too, just Hippolyte.
Gotcha.
Or Hippolyte, I don't know which. I don't know which, but I'm glad I'm glad Matt Wagner started doing Grendel again. I'm trying to think of there was a long time where I think he didn't start doing Hunter Rose Grendel again until the 2000s.
Yeah. He didn't want to, and then he wanted to.
Go ahead.
What was that, Scott?
I was going to say, I like Matt Wagner a lot, but I've never read any of his Grendel stuff. I've read everything else.
Yeah.
So that's my blind spot. I mean, I know about it, but I've never read it.
Right. Yeah, he because I don't think I read Grendel. I read Grendel in the 80s. I don't think I read it all through the 90s. I don't know how much of it existed because after a while he like gave over his Grendel comic to other people.
It'd be very ironic if he also did a Beowulf series.
A who?
Beowulf.
Yeah. Didn't who did the Beowulf graphic novel for first? Was it Jerry Bingham or somebody?
Oh God, I think I have a copy of that, but I don't.
So do I. I think it's on my shelf.
To look it up. I'm not really sure.
His brother is Elephant Backflip Coffee. I'm so sorry. Oh, there we go. Hippolyte.
Hippolyte. Okay.
Hippolyte.
Hippolyte. And his brother is Elephant Backflip Coffee. Yes, that makes sense.
Never-ending numbers are killing comics. Modern readers don't know what they want.
Yeah, you know what? But there are no big numbers anymore.
There haven't been never-ending numbers in 15 years.
Yeah, everything gets rebooted into number one.
Comics. Me personally, I know I'm weird. I would actually prefer bigger numbers.
Yeah,
one of the reasons I don't buy any Marvel and DC comics is the numbers, because at one point I would, like I said, I'm mainly an indie guy, but I dip back into Marvel and DC every now and then to check out stuff, to see what was going on. I stopped doing that when they renumbered everything, because that was the last tenuous link I had to them. I might not know anybody who's doing this latest issue of Spider-Man, but at least I knew what Spider-Man 604 was as a concept.
Exactly. And then if you're a newer reader and you don't have the history to know that this particular character has been rebooted 10 times in the past 20 years, which number one is it?
Yeah. Well, I understand, because it's all short-term thinking. If number ones give you a boost in sales, make every issue a number one. The Lake Wobegon syndrome. And that's what they do mostly. But what it is that eliminates all the people like me. That eliminate and there are a lot more casual readers of comics, Marvel and DC, than there are hardcore readers. Matter of fact, I remember sometime in the mid 90s, I think, or it may have even been early 90s. Marvel actually paid to do some market research, which never happens in comics. And one of the things that they were shocked by, and all of us were shocked by, was that half of Marvel comics were sold to casual readers who bought 5 issues a year. And everybody assumed that if you were a Marvel comic reader of Spider-Man, you bought 12 issues a year of Spider-Man. And 45% of their readers did that. But the other 55% didn't. And by I think constantly making new number ones cuts that 55% off, because they don't know, they don't care about number ones. It's the 45% hardcore who care about number ones. Yeah. And probably even a smaller percentage of, but if you're a person who buys every number one issue, you're in that 45% hardcore. You're not in that 55% casual. So that 55% casual went away. And I think even that 45% hardcore, all the new number ones turned off. Because I can remember, and this is the late 90s, the earliest comic shop I still went to, which opened in 1981, closed in 1998 or 1999. The woman who was running it was like, I think they just I think it was after they renumbered Spider-Man at some point. I forget which issue. And she said something like, it's good. It's good that the number ones get so many people interested as a jumping on point. The problem is a lot of people also use it as a jumping off point.
Yep.
So it's like they now, because I even, one of the guys, one of the guys I was talking with at the comic shop today, he still buys a bunch of the Marvel and DCs that he has long runs of. He still buys Spider-Man because he has every issue since 1970 of Amazing Spider-Man. He doesn't want to break his run, but he doesn't even read it. Mm-hmm. It's guys like that who, when you renumber it, they stop.
Right. Because even if the story, a lot of people did this if they were a strong fan of that particular character. You held on with the comic, hoping that it would get better, and sometimes it did. Yeah. Now it doesn't matter if it gets better or not. You were not enjoying it anymore. Comic ends at number 12. Fine, I'm out of here.
Right. Exactly. I think runs should all be online on a weekly basis. If a run does well, then make a trade paperback using print on demand. The quality isn't quite there yet, up to offset, but it's getting there. No more problems vesting in big upfront. Then you've got to distribute. With Marvel's new book distributor, they may do more print on demand, but they have to get the print on demand technology.
Historically, that would have been a printing nightmare.
Yeah. Well, now
it's getting easier.
The problem is print on demand is a giant inkjet printer. That's what offset printing with printing plates and whatever gives you better quality and cheaper big print runs. Print on demand
scale.
Yeah, print on demand is good for small print runs, but not big. Doing a big print run, you can't do it. But for small print runs, it's fine. But like I said, the pre-press would be completely different.
People have this idea that if you print to order, then you don't lose money.
Yeah.
Or that's not exactly true.
No, because you got to get orders. You got to get it out there to get orders. Went to the Savannah Comic-Con. 3 comic shops and 6 comic creators showed up. Not a ton of interest from the crowd. Mostly toys and cosplay and large. Yeah, that's what Jeff was telling us last week that he went to in Houston. He went to a Comic-Con.
Yeah, it was in Houston. Yeah.
And there were thousands of people, and none of them interested in comics.
You know what? These people who only care about the merchandising and the cosplay remind me of cargo cults. They don't understand the concept of what they're doing, but think they get something out of it the way that the readers do.
Maybe they do. It's hard to say.
Oh, they're getting something. I'm sure they're getting something out of it, but it's not the same. It's a superficial enjoyment. Maybe that's all they need, I guess.
Yeah.
Big
print runs are only a financing problem when you don't have access to capital. Marvel and DC have access to lots of capital, which makes financing big print runs a lot easier and a lot more profitable.
And with as many titles as Marvel and DC do, they've got to schedule those months in advance just so the printers fit it in their schedule.
Right. Matter of fact, Bad Idea, who I'm doing the production for, they do all their printing like in between Marvel and DC print runs. They have to use a print broker who figures all that stuff out, and they can't miss their window.
Yeah.
It would be
my old magazine worked like that. We were in the middle of two of the big publications in the group, and ours was just to keep the printer running.
Yeah.
It would be interesting, and I know people have talked about this for years, if we were eventually going to get home printers for books, they're equivalent of 3D printers for physical objects. We can print out a high-quality book at your house. I don't know if that's going to happen anytime soon, but it would be interesting to see what happens if that.
Remember, there was a time when people thought that they would buy the bookstore or the newsstand would print
directly in house.
Yeah, but that never happened because the technology just wasn't feasible at the price point that they needed.
But I've been hearing that story since the 1970s. And comics are probably as popular now as they've been since World War II.
I'll quote John Romita. I've lived through the death of comics about 4 times now.
Yeah. Now the thing here is that if the bookstore and newsstand printed the comics or any other magazine or book, they'd be stuck with anything that they didn't sell. And they would they would not print on demand. You would need to have some 50 or 100 of something ready to go.
Well, hold on. First of all, we've got to separate. Print on demand really means printing an individual book or 10 individual books, because offset printing is actually print on demand too, in terms of they don't print more copies than Marvel or DC demand they print. So print on demand would mean you'd need some sort of automatic machine at a comic shop or in some location or even your home, that if you wanted to read the latest issue of Spider-Man, you pressed a button and the latest issue of Spider-Man comes out. We are so far from that it's nuts.
Right. What I'm getting at,
what print on demand means to us is Amazon or Blurb, and
what's the other
you get one of your fans to order a book from them, and they print it and ship it to them. And shipping is more than the book.
It would be nice if we had the equivalent of a replicator from Star Trek, except for books. We could put one in-house, and it would be economically feasible to do so.
I think we have a better chance of inventing a replicator than inventing a home printing press.
If you invent a replicator, then all your problems are pretty much solved anyway. So.
He's written a bit about the print-on-demand system. I wonder what he wrote. I've done a couple of things print on demand, and it's expensive. The shipping kills it. It doesn't matter how low you price your book to think you can sell stuff. The shipping kills it.
Yeah.
And if you want the book shipped to you, holy cow, it's even more expensive.
Oh, if you want to ship to another country these days, you forget about it.
Forget shipping to another country. Let's just say this is on Blurb. I made some books. I had a let's say I made a $15. I think it was around $15. The shipping on it would be $8. So all of a sudden, my $15 book is $23 plus tax. So now everybody's paying $25 for a $15 book. And nobody, who wants to pay $25 for a $15 book? And I said to myself, well, I want to see if let's say I want 100 copies of this book, me. And I don't even have, it was only 48 pages, 8.5 by 11. So not especially, like a magazine size.
Right.
If I want to order 100 copies for myself, I can get them for, I don't know, $10 a copy. What's that, $1,000 for 100 copies?
Yeah.
Shipping on that was like $225. I was like, what? That's insane. It was crazy. So that was about 5 years ago. I don't know if they improved it. Yeah, we have to look at real numbers to be sure, but there's still...
Well, here's the thing about real numbers, okay? You've got to get out of this mindset that the only thing in America is the direct market. Raina Telgemeier is selling hundreds of thousands of copies, and those are real numbers. They're not being sold in the direct market.
And also selling 100,000 copies for $1 a copy in 1996 is the same as selling 25,000 copies for $4 a comic. Comic print. Yeah, I've said the quality of print on demand has raised up a whole lot, but like I said, that's on 25 copies. The quality might not be the same if you order 25,000 copies with print on demand. But yeah, I would say the print on demand has improved a whole lot over the last 10 years. It's good. They used to look like photocopies. Now they look like actually printed matter. Printing would had pod shops, at least in big cities. There would be no shipping, no storage costs, no paper waste.
I think the idea would be that you'd have this big printer type machine on the side of the road. You'd go up to a touch screen. You'd punch up a code, and it would print the item that code represents.
I just got this mental image of a drive-through print shop.
And I'll just like to have to point out, I went down to New York City this week for the first time since COVID started. So I go to my local train station to get my ticket, and they have new machines there. New machines with new software with sun glare on them. I'm pretty tech savvy. It took me 10 times longer to get this ticket to Penn Station. It took to navigate. And first of all, the LCD machine is down here. It's waist high. So I'm down here going like this. I tried to pay for it with my credit card. It got canceled out, so I just used cash. It took me 5 minutes to make this 30-second transaction. Can you imagine ordering a comic book from a print-on-demand machine that's on the edge of town? I couldn't order. It was frustrating ordering 2 tickets. Imagine ordering Spider-Man number 374 with cover Z or whatever. Ooh, I don't know how well that would work.
I mean, in a perfect world, you'd have like an online or an app or whatever that you could pre-order it instead of waiting to get there.
But now you have distribution costs again.
Yeah.
And from what I understand, print is still outselling digital by a large margin.
And comic stores, as many comic stores are opening as are closing. It's kind of nutty. I mean, it's not. Yeah, I thought the printing quality was fine. Like I said, I think print-on-demand printing quality is pretty good, but that's short-run stuff too. You can't. A machine that's designed to print on demand X amount of copies a day is going to have a hard time printing X times 100 copies a day. So I don't know I don't know how well print on demand will work for scaled up.
It depends on how long it takes
print comics
to evolve too.
Okay, there will be an assistant. Yeah, you're going to need an assistant. You're going to need someone to run that machine. Because, you got to choose between, going into the comic shop to pick a comic you want to read, people say is over. Like to non-comic people, and even some comic people, it's like, they look around like, I don't know what to buy. Imagine seeing a list of names on a screen. How do you know what to buy? That'd be tough. That'd be tough. Comic Wellsprings run the machine nonstop, I bet. Yeah, but still, even if you running your machine non-stop to print out 1,000 copies is not the same as a different machine that prints 100,000 copies in that same amount of time. If your machine that you run non-stop to print 10,000 copies needs to print 500,000 copies, you're out of luck. So that could be, like I said, I don't know how fast. I've never seen one of these print-on-demand machines. I'd like to see one. Did I go through my whole pile of comics? I don't even know. Let me see here. Oh, no. I forgot.
Wait, there's more.
I forgot vinyl, which got weird with issue 2. This is the one. Who's doing this one? Doug Wagner is the writer. The artist is Daniel Hilliard. Dave Stewart on colors. Ed Dukeshire on the letters. The first issue of this one had it was the one that I said looked like Invincible. The art on it looks like Invincible. The first issue had a retired FBI agent who was still working for the FBI freelance, sort of befriending this serial killer to get evidence on the serial killer. And then in the middle of his lunch with the serial killer, when he's talking to the FBI on the earpiece, this woman and her goons show up, and she's some sort of cult leader who this guy ran afoul of during his career. So she's picking him up so she can torture and kill him, the FBI agent, that is. So she picks up the FBI agent, brings him back to her cult leader house, and then we find that the serial killer wants to rescue him, I think. That's how the first issue went. This second issue, we learned more about the serial killer has his socializing club of other serial killers. And this cult leader woman has these like mystical creatures around her too. So now we're starting a serial killer versus mystical cult weirdos fight that's really bloody. And it's just kind of nuts. But it was a lot of fun. Good stuff. Some nice artwork. The cult leader hires mercenaries just to be cannon fodder against the serial killers. And she's got these weirdo...
That makes no sense.
What was that?
Why would serial killers even be able to fight against mercenaries?
I think they might have some sort of weird mystical superpower too. I'm not 100% clear on that. But like this woman has these where are they? See that yellow mask there? That woman in that yellow mask. There we go. There are these sort of tall women in diaphanous robes and yellow masks who the serial killer was like, oh, I've never seen one of those before. They're like spirits who have left and they bring them back into these new bodies. So he can somehow sense that they're not normal humans, these weird spirit bodies. So I think there's more mysticism in this than I first suspected with the first issue. But I liked the second issue. I think there's magic powers. Is what New readers should start reading online. Going to a shop should only be to get paper versions, what you really like. Yeah, but getting people to read online isn't always easy either.
Yeah, once you start saying should, then you're taking people's choices away, and that's never.
Well, I understand, but and also, a lot of people think reading online should be free, so it's not like they'll buy stuff. Google tells me that machine is $20,000. Oh, the print-on-demand machine. That's not out of the range of starting a business, though. I mean, it's cheaper than an offset printer, I imagine. Which reminds me, speaking of printing, you guys, of course, know Charlton Comics from the 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s into the 80s.
Oh, I saw something about that recently where a guy was doing some project on how wacky the printing was. Like, I can't remember exactly what it was, but I saw something recently that had to do with that.
That had what?
It had to do with how wacky the printing on Charlton Comics was, and he was like doing some kind of.
I found out why that is. I never knew. Well, I knew that Charlton only published comics to keep their printing presses going. They were the one comic company that owned their printing presses.
Gotcha.
But they printed on the cheapest paper quality possible. Yada yada yada. But what I never read before, what I never realized, by the late 60s, printing technology had moved on so much from the 50s, early 50s, whenever Charlton started, that the quality of other comics was so much better. And it was so that by the time like the 80s rolled around, owning their own printing presses was a hindrance rather than a help, because they couldn't afford to replace them, and they couldn't keep up with their stuff. Not only their comics, but all the stuff they printed looked terrible compared to modern printing.
And even back then, it probably would have been cheaper to replace them than it would have been to upgrade them.
Well, you couldn't upgrade them; they were not built for upgrading them, and replacing them they weren't making enough money to replace them. Young folks read online. I read online a ton. Young folks don't read comics online. I know.
Yeah, young folks watch TikTok.
Yeah, young folks watch a lot of TikTok. They don't read comics online.
Maybe this is my age, but what can you do on TikTok that you cannot do on YouTube?
TikTok, it's short and it's endless.
Fine, but you can make short videos.
No. I had it's endless. I hadn't realized this before.
I have a theory, but I could be wrong.
Well, first of all, TikTok is a short form video. YouTube is long, and TikTok is made for continuous consumption. Where with YouTube, you have to click on stuff and you have to move. The way TikTok works is you have a short 10-second video. Right. And you just scroll up, and there's another short 10-second video, and you can scroll till you die.
Here's my theory: you could do the same thing on YouTube by creating a playlist or.
No, but you have to make it would be.
They could set it up where they could do the same thing.
Right, it would be a kludge. You don't have to set it up on the YouTube. YouTube is long form; is completely different.
My theory is why TikTok is as popular is not because of the short videos. Is because they're formatted vertically to fit onto a phone screen.
Yeah, well, that's part of it, but it's also because it's short videos and it's short attention span. Right. If you don't like this one, the next one is a.
That's exactly why I don't like TikTok. Is because it's formatted vertically. I want a widescreen format.
Yeah. Young kids only use the internet on their phones. They don't use computers. We use computers.
Right.
Tell me about it. Oh my God! I used to do tech support for satellite TV. And stuff like that, and people did have to do something like that. I'm trying to watch TV on a computer, whatever. Bring up your web browser. What's a web browser? Stop. Get a book, because you can't watch TV. Okay.
My nephew, who's 17, besides his schoolwork, I don't think is ever on a computer. Never. They just don't. It's a completely different thing. You heard about the French government cultural check to young people?
Oh, I saw an article on that earlier today. They gave a lot. I don't know if it's nationwide. They gave them like the equivalent of $350 US.
Exactly.
And they're spending a lot of it on bande dessinée.
Well, what else?
But my other cousin who pointed out they don't like TikTok because it's endless. I never noticed it, but you can sit there and it'll eat up all your time. Because it's like I like Instagram better because Instagram is now imitating TikTok with their reels. It's the same thing.
Yeah.
But it used to be with Instagram when it was still pictures or even videos, you would get to the end of your feed.
Right.
And that would be it. So you'd look at the new stuff and you'd be done. With TikTok, there is no end to your feed. It is endless forever.
I like Instagram too.
Oh, wow.
Oh, so it was each kid. Okay.
Well, that's good for French comic industry.
Well, not quite, but because they spend it on manga.
Oh, okay.
And in the U.S. comics never really fought with French comics for popularity in France, but manga does.
That reminds me. Have you seen the new manga size Marvel Masterworks?
No, but I'm not against it.
Yeah, I wonder what kids are going to want to buy that Silver Age stuff. But it's $20 for 10 issues in Marvel Masterworks manga size, full color.
Mm.
That size would kill it for me.
Yeah, it's not for you and me.
Yeah,
but it's going to cost $10. That's what manga costs.
I think it's. I don't know if it's. I don't know the exact. I thought it was 20. It might. I don't know. I could be wrong. I didn't look that closely.
Yeah, that's the thing. The manga costs 10. You put something on at the same size at 20, even if it's colored. But yeah, and it's the Silver Age stuff. I mean, if they were printing.
I don't know who the target audience is for this Silver Age stuff. But you know what I thought was a good idea? At least the idea in my head was better than the actual idea. Do you remember, oh God, how long ago was it now? I was on sometime in the 2010s. Marvel put out some hardcovers of like the Hulk. Oh, look, there's Daisy. Hello there.
Hey, Daisy. Feeling better?
Good to see you.
Yeah, and you as well. I'm finally not falling over. Oh, hold on.
That's good.
That's always good.
That light. I should turn off that light.
Whatever you want.
I always like the Tiffany style shades on those.
Me too. I don't even care that it's a fake.
No, I don't either. There's some of the ones
just a nice glass.
Art Deco movement, like the Frank Lloyd Wright style.
Yeah,
I like a whole lot.
Yeah, I love the all the Art Nouveau stuff. I mean, like the Alphonse Mucha drawings are kind of played out, but I still like them.
I still like his, and Terry Moore does them really well. But
yes, yep. So what's been the topic this evening?
Oh, well, right now we're talking comics, print on demand.
We've already played a game.
We played a game.
Nice. That's
I came up with a comic book variation of F, Marry, Kill.
Ooh. What? Just give me one example of what you guys did.
Okay. The game is called Read, Rip, and Slab. So one comic you have to read, one comic you have to rip up, and one comic you send off to be graded and slabbed, and that's probably the one you think is going to be the worth the most money. So I tried to come up with like 3 comics of sort of equal status to see which one would. Let's see, which is the last one we did. Oh, here's one. This will be one. It's 1991 Marvel Comics.
Mm-hmm.
Hulk 337, which was a Hulk issue drawn by Dale Keown, written by Peter David, and had this nice green background, green foil background that everybody loved.
Mm.
The other one was Infinity Gauntlet #1, which the Avengers movie was built. And the other, what was that last one? Oh, New Mutants 100, a Rob Liefeld book, New Mutants book. But not the most valuable Rob Liefeld stuff, just a semi-valuable one. So you'd have to read one you keep and read, one you tear up, and one you get slabbed.
That's since I'm only familiar with the Infinity Gauntlet, unfortunately, I'd probably be a bad person playing this game. So I couldn't tell you. I was working in Forbidden Comics when the Infinity Gauntlet came out. And it was, all I remember was carrying a stack of them about that high to go put on the shelf. And all these hands kept coming out of nowhere trying to grab them. And I'd have to be like, wait till they're on.
I want that coffee.
They did. Well, they probably thought I was going to damage them, putting them on the shelf. So everybody was trying to grab one out of the middle of them.
We forgot we were supposed to dance when Daisy came on because we're the Bee Gees.
No, we're not.
Would that make me Andy Gibb?
I think so. You're Andy Gibb. Manga is probably limited. Yeah, maybe. Maybe manga can be a gateway comic. But there's adult manga stuff too. I know that from.
It would interest me. I don't know if I've ever done a study on it or not. More so in Europe, Japan would be a whole different ball of wax to see if manga is a gateway to other non-manga comics.
Yeah, I have no idea.
I don't know.
Yeah, from my experience, it isn't. But you'd probably need you need a proper study.
Yeah, we need real numbers. Like I said, do you remember a study that was done at Marvel? I don't remember when. It was like the only time Marvel ever funded a study, a marketing study. Sometime in the mid-'90s. I was just telling these guys about it. Everybody was stunned because they found out that like the majority of comics readers, maybe 55%, bought like, a handful of comics a year.
And they were
everybody assumed that if you were, because it's how we all acted. If you were like a Spider-Man fan, you bought 12 Spider-Man issues a year. That's how many there were. But it really turned out that that was only like 45% of the audience. The other 55% bought one Spider-Man issue a year, one Hulk issue a year, they just pick up a comic 6 times a year. They'd pick up 6 comics over the course of the year. And that was the bulk of comic collectors.
I don't remember.
So it was like,
I believe you, but I don't remember.
I'd be interested in seeing how big the sample size was for that study.
And where?
Yeah, I only remember it because everybody was just stunned that was the results.
Do you know if it was a nationwide study or if it was just...
I have no idea.
I'm just curious.
It was the only time I ever heard of Marvel, funding a study.
You don't actually need a nationwide study. I remember there was the city, I think in Ohio, where where they did all the studies for TV demographics.
Oh yeah, if it plays in Cleveland, it plays in Peoria. There was a couple of them. Plays in Poughkeepsie where they did studies.
Well, the thing too, also TV has far bit more market penetration than comics does. So
yeah.
Nationwide, big difference.
In the mid-'90s was when comics distribution in newsstands was going down.
Right.
So yeah, you're losing it. If newsstands had still been important in 95, 96, the number of people who would buy a comic occasionally would be even bigger. And it's not even 5 Spider-Man a year. It would be 1, 2.
Yeah.
Now, I just wonder how they would play out regionally, because I'm sure it's going to be different in Topeka, Kansas than it is in New York City.
Sure, because the distribution isn't the same. You're always missing issues.
Well, not to mention that the demographic is different. Like, you don't know what the income level is of these, kids.
And you're more likely to have a bigger percentage of people liking different types of arts when there are bigger concentrations of population.
Yeah.
It's easier to get 10% of people who like crazy stuff in New York than in Topeka.
Mm-hmm.
Then you have 1%.
I think the internet has changed a lot of that, though, especially in terms of like when Tim and I are talking. Sometimes we've discovered that because I grew up and lived near New York City, and he was down in Virginia, I got things. All comic book trends even happened earlier here than there. Happened 2 or 3 years earlier. Right. Mm-hmm. I don't think that happens as much. I don't think because it all started because we were discussing Alan Moore.
Right.
And he said something about Watchmen putting Alan Moore on the map. And I was like, no, he was on the map. He got Watchmen because Swamp Thing. Well, it was just that.
And we didn't know about it at the time. Yeah.
Right. People in Virginia didn't know about Alan Moore as much as people in New York, just because.
Tim grew up in a region very similar to what I did. It's close, not exact, but it's really close. And unless you read, unless you went out of your way to read something like Comics Scene or one of the Starlog magazines, or unless you were a goof like I was and had a subscription to Comic Buyer's Guide, which is very unusual for this area.
Right.
You didn't know what was happening in the world of comics unless you saw something on TV about it or you read a magazine about it.
Yeah, even worldwide, you're right. Worldwide things travel a lot faster.
Mm-hmm. And speaking of somebody who was a girl, sorry to eat a bagel at you guys. Speaking of somebody who was a girl in the 70s, it wasn't. In other words, you had to be into comics for comics to be visible. And because I wasn't allowed to read them, I was very much aware of pretty much every science fiction trashy paperback that was out there because I read every single one that I could find. But I was not overly aware of what comic books were out there because I wasn't allowed to read them. And they weren't very prominent in any of the stores. But they certainly sold them.
Yeah. And I think...
Go ahead.
There was no big.
Tim also said that he didn't have access to a comic shop till like 1985.
Right.
And mine opened in 1981, so that makes a big difference.
Yeah, they had them in bookstores when I was a kid, the bookstores and the drugstore, like on the magazine.
Yeah.
But again,
that was the newsstand.
Yeah.
But the first English language comics that I bought were newsstand editions, even here. Yeah. I didn't know there were comic shops. A guy I knew in high school told me there were comic shops in Lisbon, so I finally went to one in 1998.
Were you impressed?
When you were...
Well, yeah. It's hundreds of comics.
So when you were buying these science fiction paperbacks back in the day, were you actively trying to keep up with what was being published in advance?
Not in advance, no.
Okay, I was just curious.
I would just go down there with my allowance every week. I would ride my red bike with the banana seat that was red glitter.
Right.
And ride that down to the bookstore, and I would just go through and see which science fiction books I had never read. So it was all. I have a collection of them over in the we're in the library. Right?
I have a whole room full of stuff like that.
I absolutely love collecting it, and partially for the artwork that's on the covers of those books, because it's fantastic.
There is it's being done by a guy that's done some comics too. I saved the link on Amazon. There's an artist, and I can't remember his name, that is doing a book. I think it's supposed to be out like October, November, something like that, of pulp science fiction covers.
I would buy that in a second.
If I find it, I'll send you the link for it. But I can't remember the artist's name. But he's a comics guy.
Right. And I would still I love stuff like that. It's like it's cheesy, forgotten art, and I'll never forget there was a book that when I was I forget how old I was. I think it was like 12. I must have been 12 or 13, and I misread the title of the book.
Mm-hmm.
All I knew was it involved a robot, and it was I thought that the title of the book was The Silver Metal Lover. In other words, somebody who loved silver as a metal.
Right.
That was not it.
That was not. Yeah.
It was the silver metal lover.
Yeah.
And like a woman who falls in love with a robot guy, and I got through it. I remember when my mom asked me what I was reading at one point. I'm like, oh, The Silver Metal Lover, and she's like, what? And I hadn't started it yet, or I had only just gotten into it, and I'm like, yeah, it's because I was really into silver jewelry. Like I had the whole Stevie Nicks wannabe bohemian thing going on at that age, and so I was like totally into it. I'll never forget that halfway through the book I was like, oh, never mind.
I took a moment to look up that Larry Hama quote from yesterday.
Ooh, yeah.
Ruben Diaz was asking comic book people what their non-comic book job was now. And Larry Hama said, I'm back to doing mainstream comics again. But there was an 8-year stretch when no comics editor would return my calls and got by script doctoring, writing graphic histories, storyboarding for movies, commercials, and TV and video games. Tried to get teaching gigs, even took all the required courses, had a gig at SVA for 2 days. Then all my hours got claimed by tenured teachers.
Wow.
Took the New York State exam, paid for the required courses, and then was told that the only art teachers they wanted were ones who could teach Photoshop. Also never got invited to a single con during those lean years. And then he said later on,
wow.
He said, and someone asked, 8 years is quite a stretch. What do you think changed things up for what reversed the curse? And he said, I somehow morphed from being a has-been into a living legend. And he said, it didn't help that Jemis blacklisted me at Marvel for pointing out that the Emperor was naked. And Fabian writes back, see? Things like that are what make you a legend.
It's interesting. I see this happen in music a lot. That for years and years, a band will continue on, and they've been around for a long time and nobody would give a crap about them. But it seems like there's a certain critical mass that they've been around, 25 plus, whatever that magic number is.
Yeah.
All of a sudden everybody falls in love with them.
Yeah.
Well, I'm glad it came out there.
He morphed from a has-been to a living legend. Wow. That's
a good
morph.
Chances that go way up,
What do you guys do that? I mean, I know what Jared does, but what do you, Paulo and Scott? What do you guys do in or out of comics?
I don't do anything in comics except spend money.
You mean just like hobby-wise, or
no? Like, what's your day job, basically?
I was trying to get into IT. I was a journalist for 20 years.
Oh, cool! Excellent.
I've been out of work for 13 months. So
you've been working what?
I've been out of work for 13 months. So I need to get another job here fairly soon-ish. But before that, I did very, very advanced tech support for satellite TV.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah, tech support.
Yeah, I mean, we're just like one step below actual engineers.
You work for the FBI?
My best friend from high school, no, I don't work I'll tell you a funny story. Never worked for the FBI, but my best friend from high school was an aerospace engineer. And at Virginia Tech at the time, there was a combination of both aerospace and oceanographic engineering, so they taught both. Mm-hmm. So you learned fluid dynamics both on submarines and airplanes. His senior year, he was part of the design team, and they entered a national competition to design a ground attack fighter, and his team won.
Wow.
3 days later, the CIA called him and offered him a job.
Wow.
He hadn't even graduated from college yet.
Yeah, that's
wow. And you have a high-paying government job waiting on you. That's a pretty good gig.
Yeah, he took it, right?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Oh, okay, good.
He said the interview process was the most grueling thing he had to go through in his entire life.
I mean, that's probably why they try and snag people right out of school.
Yeah.
is that they haven't had a chance to build up any kind of criminal record.
But it was just 3 days, boom.
Yeah.
This is pre-internet, basically. Wow.
Amazing.
I got to pay off my student debt when I get out of college. So.
How is it that I could have scored like really high on intelligence tests, and yet I haven't been able to parlay that into any kind of mill?
I think the IQ tests, are overrated.
Oh, they definitely are overrated. I mean, nothing if you have no memory. But
also, dumb people understand each other better than they understand smart people.
This is true. Yeah, there was an interview today with some guy, some Italian dude who owns a restaurant, and he was a master. It has nothing to do with comics, so I won't get into it. But it was very fancy, stupid.
Stupid.
No.
Same thing, same way, every day. What the hell song is that?
I don't know.
Stupid factions. Yeah. It's like a song from the late set. Stupid. Hey. Oh my God, I don't have to look that one. Stupid. Every day, same thing. It's like Elvis Costello. What was that?
The only song was stupid I can remember. It was Alice Cooper's song called "Hey Stupid."
No, it wasn't that. It was played. It would now be considered classic rock. It's from that late 70s era. Oh my God, I can't. It was like a minor hit by some band.
It was like I was talking about the Larry Hammond thing. That if you stay around long enough, everything eventually becomes classic rock.
Yep.
Yeah.
Nope.
It's the type of thing that we don't understand is how can somebody be simultaneously a cultural Philistine and intellectually able to be eliminated on the first round of Who Wants to Be a Millionaire and still make a lot of money.
Yeah. Sorry, I mean, sometimes really
3 words: mid-level management.
But some of these people are so profoundly stupid that, I mean, if I make the mistake of trying to argue with one of them, I'm really ineffective because at least half of my consciousness is wondering how on earth they survived to adulthood. Because these are the kind of people who I can't imagine that as children they weren't like, I'm going to ride my bike off the roof, or I'm going to.
The one advantage they really have is just sheer stubbornness.
I guess.
They're so stupid, they don't realize they're stubborn.
I can't.
Well, there's a lot of people who aren't even stupid. It's just that we as human beings tend to when we believe something, it's hard to get us not to believe it.
Oh, absolutely.
And the first thing that comes into our head is that we hear that someone convinces us of is what we believe. So it's really, which is why everybody is always trying to control the narrative of the new or whatever.
You turn into Gollum where you have the thing that says, I'm not listening to you.
Yeah, well, it's all also, I mean, it depends on people not being critical thinkers. Because, I mean, it's like if you're raised, I was raised going to church, and, it took me to be until about age maybe 8 or 10 before I was like, wait a minute. And that was the end of that. And
when you're a little kid, say like 8, maybe less, and you start asking big questions about things in the Bible that don't really make a lot of sense, boy, do you get pushed back quick.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Stupid Faction was Graham Parker. Okay. On Stiff Records. He knows the song.
I'm like, where did Cain's wife come from? And everybody's like,
Yeah, those are. I'm not going to get into it. I just did. My friend Scott and I were like the most annoying kids in our Sunday school and confirmation class because we were both just a little bit too critical thinky.
Have you, to bring it back to comics and the Bible, have you guys read Robert Crumb's Book of Genesis?
I've seen some artwork from it, but I haven't read it.
It is really, really good.
Is it?
Oh, I'll have to get it.
It is. He actually took the text of the Book of Genesis,
right,
and made a comic. So he didn't write anything. He used the text of the Book of Genesis.
Didn't Joe?
And it's what was that?
Didn't Joe Kubert do a Bible-related project back in the 70s?
Oh, that's right. There was a Bible, but I think no spoilers.
It doesn't end well.
But I mean, and the Book of Genesis is a lot about the early history of the Jews too. So there's all sorts of stories going on in that, and it's just a masterwork. It'll make you read the Book of Genesis because
it reminds me of what Matt Maley did in the Little Trump.
Donnie Trump means in that.
Is Crumb Jewish?
Not that I know of.
I wasn't sure, but I didn't think he was. I could be wrong. I just wondered.
But yeah, I mean, he is just such a master storyteller, and it's on display in that.
Several years ago, I saw some pencil drawings that Simon Bisley did of Bible-related stories, and he's nowhere near as gonzo as he usually is, and they were really good.
Yeah,
I was like, I'd like to see Simon Bisley draw like this instead. You know?
He likes gonzo.
He does.
Did anybody see, who was it? They might have been Scott Kobush today, who posted the two different covers of Amazing Spider-Man, what is it? Why am I having a brain fart? The first appearance of Spider-Man, Amazing.
Oh, yes.
Amazing Fantasy.
Yeah. The Kirby and the Ditko. Right.
Yeah.
The Kirby and Ditko ones, and asking which one people liked better, the first one or the corrected one.
Yeah.
The Ditko version is better.
Was that the first one?
No, they published the Kirby version.
I like the first one.
I kind of like them both. I mean, I actually have a hard time deciding between them because I don't think either is perfect.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
I don't even think either is particularly either artist's strongest cover. I think they're both middle of the pack it's a middle of the pack Kirby and a middle of the pack Ditko. But
yeah, out of all of Kirby's superhero covers of the time, Amazing Fantasy number 15 is probably the one with the least amount of energy.
Yeah, but I've seen it so much and have such affection for it.
That's true too.
That distorts.
It's burned in your brain, and that does distort your bias. Yeah.
I mean, that's one of them. That's one of the most. That and Fantastic Four #1 are probably the two most famous covers in my mind. Mm-hmm. I don't know about anyone else, but those I've seen more.
Yeah, here's just a general question, okay? And you can probably approach it either from your favorite or who you think had the most impact. But who's the best cover artist of all time?
Best cover artist? Oh.
And I realize it's a loaded question. But
it's Luis Royo.
I'd put Gil Kane's 70s Marvel stuff up there with anyone's.
Who what?
Gil Kane's 70s Marvel stuff.
Fair enough.
I mean, for superhero books or for any book?
You could break it down into. You could make it more than one. Let's just start off and say superheroes.
I'm gonna have to bow out of that one because I'm not as familiar with superheroes.
Okay, fair enough.
I'd say, even though he's not to my taste, Alex Ross.
Oh, you know what? I'm going to have to agree there.
Certainly.
Here's my thing about Alex Ross. I like Alex Ross, but when I see him do the same thing over and over and over and over, like Thomas Kincaid,
right,
it loses a little bit of its appeal. When I see him do something different, like when he did a shadow cover, that looks great.
I always say to me, Alex Ross is a one-trick pony, but it's a hell of a trick. Yeah. It's a really, really, really good trick. His trick is better than 90% of everyone else's tricks.
I think Howard Chaykin is a guy who has a lot of mainstream appeal or for the time, for the 70s and 80s would have a lot of mainstream appeal as a cover artist. For people who don't like comics, it's just that after Star Wars, he wasn't doing much that would be seen by people who don't really read comics.
Right.
Yeah. As Howard Chaykin has pointed out in that interview he did with Kayfabe and probably other times too, he was never that popular. Mm-hmm. I think Howard Chaykin is one of those artists who's who's kind of an artist's artist.
Yeah, for connoisseurs.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, you could drive yourself nuts with subcategories. You could pick like who's your favorite Vertigo cover artist. Favorite.
I don't know that I have. I don't like Vertigo comics, so I don't have a favorite Vertigo cover artist. So I have liked some of their covers.
You could pick a lot of different categories on that.
Yeah.
Although going back, I think that Luis Royo does great covers in whatever it is that he's doing. Album covers.
I've seen his heavy metal covers, but I don't think I've seen a ton of his stuff.
He didn't do covers for heavy metals. For heavy metal, he would do a painting.
Yeah.
And they would buy the art.
Right.
Because there are covers of heavy metal who have also been used in video games and album covers and music magazines.
Yeah.
I do like that artwork, though. I love all the stuff from the heavy metal magazines.
Mm-hmm.
I like some artists better than others.
But I mean,
I like Mobius a lot better than Krapax, for example. But that's just personal taste.
Like I think Stan Sakai is a good cover artist, but he only does covers for Saga Yojimba.
Right. Yeah, unless he's done like a charity kind of thing.
Yeah. He's probably done. I've seen some. He's done some alternate covers in recent years for other stuff, but it's really tough to call him a cover artist. But I like his covers.
That's why it's a hard question to answer, is because
that's true.
You can't really
compare them. I have to replace my.
If I had to pick one, for me, it would be Michael Kaluta.
Oh, he's an excellent cover artist. Yeah. Terry Moore. Excellent cover artist. But he only does his own covers. Well,
that's true of a lot of
the
independent writer artists.
Yeah.
Guys like Jeff Smith.
But I have to say there's not a lot of good cover artists in indie books.
Not traditionally, that's true.
I mean, just right now, right here and now.
Right. Okay.
The indie books I bought this week, Vinyl, which incidentally you might like, Caroline.
Ooh, what's it about?
Not a great cover. It's about serial killers versus a cult of magic users.
Oh, that's right. It was like.
And I think the serial killers have some sort of superpowers too, with an FBI agent caught in the middle. It's only the second issue. This is, and it just got weird with this issue. Not a great cover.
It's like you granted my wish.
Matt Wagner, solid covers, not great. He's an old timer though, so I wouldn't even count him as current. He's done some. He can do a nice book cover, but whoever this
it's David Peterson.
The Mouse Guard guy, okay cover, not great. I think the Peach Momoko ones were better, but I like these.
Well, David Peterson's kind of like if anybody else would do a cover of one of his Mouse Guard books, it would look odd because he's not doing it. And I view that the same way as Stan Sakai too.
Department of Truth is like in the Vertigo style of covers. I'm not a big fan of them.
Me neither. Of course, you have to count it as Vertigo style because, of course, Vertigo has stuff that isn't Vertigo style. But when we're talking, it's the wannabe Dave McKean, the guys who want to be like Dave McKean and doing
guys
Sandman.
Want to be like Dave McKean. There you go.
And like Minded Comics just said it.
I really hate this indie comic logo in the center thing. I hate that. It just doesn't. It very rarely works. But they keep like a lot of indie comics these days do that. Spawn. Paolo really liked this cover. I think it's okay. It's interesting, but we don't even know who this guy is. So, was he Bjorn Barons? So I don't even know if we can call him a current cover artist, or he just started doing covers, or he's been doing covers for 10 years and we've never noticed him.
The guy's an obvious Frazetta fan.
Or maybe that was his comment on the clothing he had when he was born. He was Bjorn Barons.
Then we got Tom Mandrake and Sergio Aragonés. This cover is
Tom Yates.
This cover is mediocre. Tom Yates, pardon.
How's the story?
What I call him? The The double page spread is what sold me the book, as I showed before, but the cover certainly didn't.
Yeah.
And this is one of Dave Sims' parody covers. Not even one of his better ones, I don't think.
Unethical.
8 comics I bought this, 8 indie comics, not one cover that stand. If I would say that, probably the Matt Wagner one would be my favorite, and this is middle of the road cover. So I just don't think there's a lot of good indie comic cover.
The striking thing about that Wagner cover is the logo.
What was that?
I think the most striking thing about that Wagner cover is the logo.
Yeah. Oh, we were talking about the Bible before. Those Chester Brown Bible stories were good in the back of Yummy Fire. He never finished that, though. Steranko, excellent cover artist. Yes. Kirby, of course, excellent cover artist. McKean's cover's impressive at another level, especially at live. Yeah, I'd like to see those. Sometimes seeing the art, the original art, can change your perception of something.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm. I can remember when I saw, like, Superman art from the 40s, which I always found to be boring.
Wayne boring?
I saw that in person in a museum. Holy cow, was it nice.
Yeah.
It was just beautiful. Of course, they were this big, the pages. Not this big. It was just holy cow.
Charles Vess and I went to the Brandywine Museum. And they had, at the time we went, they had NCY's Treasure Island covers up. And they rotate them around. There's this one, I mean, literally the thing is, 20 feet wide and 15 feet tall. And you look at it, you see little mounds of paint that are built up like little mountains as texture that you don't see in reproductions.
Yeah.
It's a whole experience.
That's why looking at actual art is so much better than reproductions.
Yeah. I was like a kid in a candy store. It's like, oh my God.
Yeah. I don't know how relaxing being a cover artist is, but I bet it's more relaxing than drawing 24 pages of interiors.
Mm-hmm. Unless you're
It's more relaxing than bagging groceries. It's more relaxing.
Yeah, I was talking about the Gru before. To me, like, the Gru was I found the Gru mildly interesting. It was that double page spread that I love. That double page spread is what sold me the Gru, because the last Gru I got, I think, was Gru versus Conan. And I thought that was okay. I found it mildly interesting. So I wasn't sure if I was going to get this Gru, but so I picked it up in the store and I flipped to that double page spread and was like, all right, I'm paying $4 for this double page spread. Because there's so much to look in it.
From what Sergio said, this is going to be the last Gru.
I like Jared Osborne covers on some titles too. Sure, why not? My look is distinct. I'm putting together my Patreon magazine. That's what I've been doing for the last week and a half. I'm going to try and do Patreon finally, see if I can, because I was trying to figure out what I had to offer people, if I could convince them to give me $5 a month. And I decided to make a digital magazine out of my art. I can keep that going monthly for a long time. So I've been designing the magazine, which is really hard to reinterpret, because you spend so much time on a piece of art. And when you're working on a piece of art, what you're doing is you're thinking about how it looks and how people are going to look at it, and you're getting everything just right, and you're getting it to your satisfaction, how it looks as a piece of art. And then you're making like a digital magazine about it, and you're like, well, how do I get this piece of art to look on an iPad? And it's like a whole different thing. It's not like, if you just kind of take a picture of it, it looks terrible. So it's like, you have to design around it and try and figure out how to present it in a way that's appealing. And that's not an easy process.
You could do
it's kind of easier with other people's art when you're doing design.
You could do a whole issue just on your butt picture. Yes.
Pop art asses.
And you could call it Cracked, and then you get sued for the title.
Release the Kraken.
Release the crack.
Yeah, I think the Gru versus Conan made me skip the other Gru stuff, because I think Gru was one. I think they were also they were one of the first $4 comics, Dark Horse's comics went up to $4 before like Image Comics did. So I think that kept me away from that group. People look at the Mona Lisa for like 5 seconds. Yeah, I think that's their average time. Yeah, we've seen this.
Yeah, but that's the Mona Lisa is tiny. It's only like 2 feet high by 1.5 wide.
That's one thing that really saw one of Bernie Wrightson's Frankenstein originals. And it really struck me as how small the thing was.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah, they're not big. I mean, they're not tiny either. But, it's about that wide, about that tall. And I was like, and I've got this image in my brain. It's like, that should be like 10 times that size.
Mm-hmm.
It was all pen and ink work, so it couldn't be big.
I was amazed when I went, when I saw the paintings in the Louvre, that there are some that are as big as the side of a 2-story building.
Yeah.
There are some that are literally 15 feet tall, about like 30 feet wide, and I'm like, how do you even find canvas that big?
You have assistants. They do it.
Yeah, I mean, I guess obviously they're old paintings. I'm like, they must have had somebody make a special loom for it or something. There's no.
Well, that's where the term came from. They had to look so hard to find a printer to do that they had to cover such a big area. They called it canvassing the area.
Oh.
There are a lot of Dali paintings that are big, but persistence of memory isn't one of them. The melting watches. I was shocked when I saw how small persistence of memory is, because I think it was like the late '80s. I think the Modern Museum in New York had a Dali show.
How big is it?
And they also have persistence of memory in their permanent collection, and they had these big 8-foot tall, 6-foot wide Dalis all, and then they had persistence of memory is like that big.
No way.
Like 12 inches by 12 inches by. It was like tiny. I was like, holy cow!
Yeah.
That is tiny.
That's kind of amazing. That's kind of neat.
I always say to people who say, "Oh, Picasso, he had no talent. He couldn't do anything." I'm always like, oh, "Okay, you pick any artist you want me to copy a painting of, and I will. And you copy Guernica. All right, I'll do that. No problem. If you think Picasso is so untalented." It's like, and it's already done. All you have to do is because I know that even old master oil paintings, there's a technique to them, and since it's already done for you, copying it is actually not hard because you can see the technique and duplicate it. But copying a Picasso, which doesn't rely on technique like that, is really hard.
Mm-hmm.
So I would like to see Guernica. The large Dalis are late period and done with assistance. Probably, I would guess that. Yeah, they definitely looked late period because they were slick. They were a lot slicker than.
Mm-hmm.
Some of the Alphonse Mucha originals are absolutely huge. They're like 20 feet tall plus.
Wow.
And there's a museum somewhere, I don't know which country it's in, where you can go and visit them. And I've seen a couple people have gone over there, and they're just like, "Oh my God, you have to see these."
Would it be in Prague? Maybe.
I'm not sure.
Because that's where I know that there's a lot of Mucha stuff.
Right.
I don't think I've seen a Dali show since then, too. I haven't gone to. I have to go to some museums. I haven't been to the museums in a long, long time. Since the '90s.
Yeah. Nope. Yeah,
I've never been there, but from what I understand, there's some really nice murals in the New York Public Library too.
Yeah. Okay. I'm always outside the New York Public Library, but not in it.
Mm-hmm.
Outside the New York Public Library is one of my favorite places to take street photos. So I've got thousands of street photos. Around back of the New York Public Library is Bryant Park. So I'm always in Bryant Park and out and on the library steps taking street photos. But I never go into the library because I'm too busy taking photos.
I've been to the Guggenheim in Bilbao once.
Yeah.
But only because they were doing a car media presentation inside.
Matter of fact, oh my goodness, the Van Gogh is better in a museum. Oh yeah, you can see Van Gogh's brushstrokes.
Oh, yeah.
Matter of fact, the last time I think I was at a museum, it was like, when was the gates up? That was like 20 years ago.
I don't.
Because a few of us went down to see Christo's The Gates in Central Park, and we had been going to museums a bit right around that time. And we were like, oh, we should make a trip down every month or two, and then it just stopped for whoever. I think it was me, Edmar, Tony King, and one or two other people we found. And then we just stopped.
Didn't they cut the gates up and give them away as little scraps?
No, they gave away little scraps. I have a little scrap. They gave them away at the while the gates were up.
I always wanted to go to the Society of Illustrators Museum.
Matter of fact, it was like the first week I was there, and the one was like, "Oh, some people want some scraps." There's the, and everyone was like, "Oh yeah," and you're like, "Oh wow, I didn't think anybody would care about scraps." And it was like,
"Stay away from your orange acid."
Tell me you just got that out of the dictionary.
Well, you broke up on me.
Did you just get that out of the dictionary?
No, I got that out of my pile of stuff from weddings. I've got Cat and Rich, October 18th, 2003, keepsake. And I've got my Donald and Aaliyah. Donald's family is from Sierra Leone. So they handed out their family colors.
That's
that every
cool.
wore at the wedding.
Neat.
So this was their welcome to the family colors. So I still have this.
Aww. That's it.
I have some yarmulkes too. A couple of those.
Well, you have Spencer's yarmulke with the.
I have that. Oh, matter of fact, that just reminds me.
Spencer's yarmulke has a Godzilla on it.
Spencer's yarmulke is worn by Jacob Chabat's Mighty Skullboy.
We would love that. That is awesome. That's awesome. I love those yarmulkes.
Have you ever read Jacob Chabat's Mighty Skullboy Army?
I don't know, because I know who the character is, but I can't remember if I know it through osmosis or if I've read the books.
They're, if you can get, I don't know if they're in print anymore. Let me see here. Dark Horse. This is volume. Dark Horse has 2 volumes. Jacob Chabat worked in the bullpen.
Really? After my time?
Yeah, after your time. And he's got this comic called The Mighty Skullboy Army. And the Mighty Skullboy Army is this robot and this monkey.
Aww.
And so Skullboy is this boy with this guy who wants to take over the world. He's an heir to this fortune. And he's always coming up with master plans that his minions, the monkey and the robot, are supposed to carry out. And the monkey doesn't. The monkey is chaos. He doesn't carry out the plans. He just does what he wants. And the robot's always trying to keep the monkey in line to carry out the plans, and the plans never get carried out. And Skullboy he's really in like the 3rd grade too. So he's got like 3rd grade classmates who are like, "Ooh, who's this weirdo?" So very funny book. If you ever want to read something funny, The Mighty Skullboy Army is it. It
sounds up my alley. I don't think I have read it, but I totally am familiar.
Sounds a little bit like Pinky and the Brain.
Yeah, it sounds like Invader Zim too.
I never did watch Invader Zim.
It's very shouty, but I mean it's worth it for Gur the robot, but just keep the volume down.
I met one of Dolly's nurses. She said he would sit painting with one bristle brush for hours. If anyone walked in front of him or interrupted him, he would stop painting for months. Wow. Have you ever seen Chuck Close? He had his, I don't know if he had a series of strokes years ago. So he started painting with his mouth. And Chuck Close, he sort of became famous in the 60s as a photorealist. He'd do these big portraits, big, huge portraits based on photographs. And he started out sort of and he would grid them up.
Mm-hmm.
And the grid became part of the painting because he wouldn't erase the grid. You would see his method. But then as his style progressed over the years, he would still do the same method, except he went from black and white into color, and he became even more involved with the grid. And these paintings were huge too. They're 30 feet tall.
Mm-hmm.
Where each little grid became its own sort of little abstract painting that when you stand back turns into the face. But he's one of the big successful artists to come out of the 60s.
Mm-hmm.
It's also amazing how quickly when Frank Frazetta had his strokes, it was amazing how quickly he taught himself how to paint with his other hand.
Yeah. Like I think he was painting with his
months. Yeah.
I can't remember now. He may have had because he was in a wheelchair. He may have had the brush like strapped to his hand, and he'd paint like that, or he'd paint with his. But I remember him being in the wheelchair. I can't remember exactly, but he may have had the brush like he wouldn't hold it. He'd have it strapped to his hand and paint. Chuck Close did some nice stuff. He's one of the fine artists I really like. Good stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Jared, have you ever been to the Society of Illustrators Museum?
Oh yeah, my friend Ed got married there.
I'd love to go there sometime.
Oh yeah, my
very nice. Yeah,
our friend Edmar has been a member there for 20 years now.
Mm-hmm.
He decided he wanted to join the society. He's an illustrator. He's like, I want to join the Society of Illustrators. So
have you ever
got
seen
something to sponsor him? What was that?
Have you ever seen the annual books that they do?
I've seen a lot of things at the society.
Yeah, they publish an annual best of.
Oh yes, I have. Look up Ed Murr. He might be in there. Edward Murr.
I had a few of those volumes, but they got too expensive.
You were there too? You said?
No. I said I have a few of those books. The annual.
Oh, the books. Oh.
Yeah, they're not cheap.
They're not.
I think the last time I was there was a couple years now, of course, but that's where Flo Steinberg's memorial was at the Society of Illustrators.
Gotcha.
And John Romita that was another time I was there in the last few years. John and Virginia Romita were there for a Spider-Man John Romita show. So everybody went down and got to say hello to John Romita for a few minutes. Mm-hmm.
Sad I missed that.
You missed it? It was fun.
I'm really sad I missed it. It's that guy. I remember my dad came up to the bullpen one day, and he just walked up to my desk and stared at me till I noticed. And it took me a while to notice that it was my dad because I kept thinking it was John Romita. So they look so much alike. So I always like John because I'm like, you remind me of my dad. But also
one of my favorite John Romita moments was when our friend Steve Bunch got embarrassed. And he never gets embarrassed.
I love that story.
It's like, this is how well respected John Romita was and is. Everybody loved John Romita. Our friend Bunch, who loves to embarrass people, who loves to, push the edges of comedy, who loves bad taste and stuff like that. And so one day, our other friend, John Bly, was working at Marvel doing his job. And he did something that made Bunch shout at him. So all of a sudden, Bunch shouts like, "John, you stupid fuck, I can't believe it." And with perfect comic timing, John Romita is walking by and turns around to Bunch and goes, What did I do? And Bunch, like, I've never seen Bunch embarrassed. And he was just like, no, not you. But that was like the most perfect comic timing you've ever seen. It's like John Romita probably has no memory of it, but it's burned into my memory. One of those things.
That's a good story.
Well, especially since Bunch is so difficult to embarrass.
Yes, that's it. Like I said, embarrassing Bunch is nearly impossible.
Mm-hmm.
So Quiet for I need to pee and refill my glass.
Pull that quote back up.
What was that?
Pull that quote back up from Gus.
About this one?
Gus, yeah, you really need another comma in that sentence.
Yeah.
That's why punctuation is important.
You know, the Oxford comma does not exist in Portuguese.
How Gus decides to refill his glass is his own business, okay?
That's true. I'm just
But I
saying
don't want to
another
hear
comma
about it.
would have served you well there.
The Oxford comma. This is why the people say we need an Oxford comma.
I have a friend that is diametrically opposed to the Oxford comma, and I want to hit him over the head for being that way.
Yeah, I would have to agree. It's,
I'm always Oxford commaing. It makes
to me,
things
there's no reason
more
to
clear.
use it.
Yeah.
It makes it much more clear. I love that example where it's like the subhead on a magazine that says like I love cooking my children and my dog.
Right.
So I love cooking my children and my dog, as opposed to I love
Gus,
cooking.
you missed Scott pointing out that you could use an Oxford comma in this sentence.
Yes.
Otherwise, you're filling up your glass in a really weird way.
Just saying.
Just saying, man. Yeah. Boy.
That's got to be just one more reason why English is such a hard language for non.
Well, it's got so
to learn.
it's a voracious language that has stolen from so many other languages.
Yep. It's like
that the rules can be a little wacky.
Well, and a lot of it is in context. Like you can only. Did you see that meme that somebody was? It's been going around recently that says something like, "If you read the way you're supposed to read or something like that."
Yeah. One of those.
It was like 17 uses of the word "read" in the paragraph, and it sort of meant something.
If you just look up the word "set" in the dictionary, there are over 22 different definitions just for that one word.
Yep.
And what's interesting in the book I'm reading about The Great Gatsby, where I'm looking up words all the time. Mm-hmm. It's a book about the writing of The Great Gatsby. It looks at the history and
so it's like
and when it was written. And there are and she even the author points out words that have changed over time, like what he meant by this word, like especially the word Holocaust in 1924 meant more of a memorial than it meant a genocide.
That's a good point, because you wouldn't have had the same connotation pre-World War II.
Right. So it's like at the end of the book, after the two characters die, I think he says something like the Holocaust has ended or something. The memorial for it's like a completely different meaning we read. And there was a few words like that. There was like in 1922, this word meant a little more like this.
Yeah.
This time of year, I refrigerate it first. Of course. All right, well, we're getting to the end of this show, so we may as well wrap up.
On that note,
say good night to everyone. I'm glad your dizziness was over and you made it. Daisy.
My God. Have you ever had that? Have you ever had the?
Only once has I ever had vertigo, and I was told it was a symptom of the London flu that I had.
Yeah.
Interesting.
When I was going into Marvel, I got out of the car to get to the train.
Yeah.
And everything went like that. And I went,
holy
cow, what's going on?
I went to MegaCon in Atlanta several years ago, and they had those overhead walkways, like little gerbil tubes.
Oh, yeah.
Buildings. I was walking through one of those and looked up at a really tall skyscraper and got it just like that.
Mm-hmm.
I'd move my head a quarter of an inch, and my perception would keep going.
Oh wow!
Whoa.
That's what happens when if there are like barometric thing. I don't get it every time, but like a lot of the time when we have a long stretch of hot weather and then it goes right to cold. I think it's because I was up in Maine for 2 days too, and my inner ear gets messed up, and then it's like every time I get up.
Have any of you guys ever been on a centrifuge like they use for astronaut training?
No.
That's an interesting experience. They have one at
one of those.
Yes, I'm sure it is. You can tell me all about it.
Yeah, you're in an Air Force base, and you had to sign a waiver stating, you weren't going to have them responsible if you had something medically, what
if we accidentally kill you,
right?
So I got where do you ride one of those? Like
Langley, lives at Langley Air Force Base,
and they just let you ride them.
No, it wasn't. It's not a typical thing, but I don't know if they even do it anymore or not.
You had an in, is what you're saying.
Exactly.
Okay. Gotcha. Because I'm thinking, of course, I haven't been on one of those. What I get?
See, you get in it, and there's a little LED readout, and like you remember the big, LED clocks that had the big numbers on it that show you how many G's you're pulling. And at about 3 or 4, you really start to notice it.
Yeah.
I wouldn't.
Well, the first thing you notice is it takes more effort to actually breathe. You have to actually make somewhat of an effort to do it.
This seems to be getting uncomfortable.
And the higher you go, you've seen footage where people's faces peel back, things like that. Your vision tunnels down from normal vision to something like that. And eventually, I was pulling like, 8, 9, something like that. There's a button that you can press to make it stop. You actually have to put effort in lifting your arm up and hitting the button. And I got out, and I felt fine for about 20 minutes. Because normally, evidently they've told me when you get out, that's usually when people start puking all over the place.
Right.
After about 20 minutes, all of a sudden, I don't feel so great, and then the blue, everything I ever ate in my life just.
Yeah, that would be me. I mean, you're talking. I've only been on.
It's a really odd experience when you notice that your vision is tunneling down. It's weird. It's uncomfortable. Yeah.
I would not enjoy that at all.
I'm going to see you again. Make this damn thing stop.
Yeah, I can't even get on a roller coaster. I've been on a roller coaster once.
I don't like rides, but I would not do that again.
Yeah, no. So,
all right. Well, I'd like to say to rather than end on vomiting, try to think up some reed ripping slabs of your own.
Okay.
We'll see if us or any of our audience could come up with some good ones. Reed ripping slabs.
The trick really is finding 3 that are comparable.
Right.
Yeah. You have to find 3 that all are desirable in some way, or all equally desirable, or all equally undesirable.
Right.
But equally desirable is better, because equally undesirable, you don't really care as much.
I think it'd be easier to do that with like indie comics from the early 80s. Because they're all, none of them are really, well, there's some exceptions, but most of them, are not huge differences price-wise.
Right. Like I said, you want some in there that have good value that, you have to rip up. All right. Well, all you guys have a good night out there. We will catch you next week. Ta-ta.
Good to see everyone.